Chapter 636. You can search for Poisonous Wife in Baidu. You can search for the latest chapter. Come to me, Bai Ming said softly. Su Zipei obeyed and walked to his side. She stood there quietly and obediently. How was the mother poisonous insect recently? Su Zipei immediately replied. Everything is as usual. The mother poisonous insect has laid a batch of new eggs and is about to mature. Very good. After this batch matures, try your best to infiltrate Tian's sect. Hearing Bai Ming's words, Su Zipei suddenly raised her head in surprise. Not an ice sect? What? Do you want revenge? Bai Ming's eyes left the golden tower and fell on Su Zipei. Su Zipei trembled slightly and said that she didn't dare. Bai Ming smiled faintly and said nothing. He turned his eyes back, and coldness flashed in his eyes. At the moment when he saw that Su Jiuzhou was Su Li, he knew that the role of the stand-in-life poisonous insect was not big. Qing Shui's circle's luck was weakened by half, and she had the bonus of Tianjiao list, so the life poisonous insect couldn't parasitize anyone in NI sect. Most of the 50 grand elders of holy sects were disabled by Su Li. Since the new poisonous insect couldn't be used, he could only find a way from the old poisonous insect. Go and wake up all the remaining 27 sects' grand elders in advance. Hearing this order, Su Zipei almost thought that she had heard it wrong. She couldn't help but ask, but this will cause fatal damage to those grand elders. They can't keep the means they used when they were alive, and their strength. Do it. Bai Ming's tone was a little faint. Su Zipei immediately stopped talking, saluted, and left the hall. Bai Ming stared at the golden tower and whispered to himself, You want revenge, but the price is the extinction of all holy sects in Qing Shui Circle. I don't know what the practitioners of Qing Shui Circle will think of your NI sect, if they know it. Speaking of this, Bai Ming raised the corner of his mouth and showed a smile. The easiest way to defeat a person was to attack his heart. Just like Ling Qing Shui, what really doomed him was not his injury, but his guilty heart. Lord, bad news. At this moment, Su Zipei came back and said in a panic, Just now, the Numas of the 27 Grand Elders disappeared at the same time. The smile on Bai Ming's face froze, and Su Zipei saw a ferocious look on his face for the first time. Blessings never come in pairs, and misfortunes never come singly. A moment later, in the dark cave, the walls were covered with insect eggs, and the smell of blood was nauseating. The altar where the 27 eggs were placed was a mess. Bright red blood was scattered all over the table, slowly dripping down the corner of the table. The warm air was still rising, as if this mess had just happened not long ago. Bai Ming stood in front of the sacrificial table, his face faintly discernible. Su Zipei followed behind him, her face full of fear and terror. What kind of punishment would she face for failing to keep an eye on him? In the silence, Bai Ming suddenly laughed softly. You know that I'm a fate ancestor, yet you still use a fate art to conceal the secrets of heaven. Are you humiliating me? However, this group of holy sect supreme elders, who he did not care about at all before, succeeded. After getting rid of the poisonous vital insect, they used various means to make him unaware. In addition, during this period of time, Su Jiuzhou, Su Li involved a lot of energy, so they didn't find such a big mistake. How much did Su Li participate in it? Was it intentional or unintentional? Bai Ming's eyes narrowed slightly. He remembered that he didn't close his eyes in the big explosion above the Xian house that day. He even clearly saw that the crazy woman stared at him and made a few mouth shapes. Are you satisfied with the interest I collected? We will meet again. Su Zipei saw Bai Ming suddenly shrugging his shoulders and immediately laughed softly. Then it turned into a loud laugh, which frightened her. It was another laughter that she had never seen before. Ha 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 ha, this is interesting. After laughing, Bai Ming suddenly turned around and stared at Su Zipei. Ling Xian was taken away by Su Jiuzhou, and there is probably no hope for her to come back. You have been a slave here for 1,000 years, and you have never complained about the bitterness. I see your sincerity. At this time, my life palace lacks a face of a younger generation. You were also a talent in the past. Are you willing to be the young lord of my life palace? Susie Pay seemed to be electrified all over, and her face was red. She was so excited that she couldn't control herself. I swear to follow you to the death. Boom. A green thunderbolt flashed through the nothingness, which shocked a group of warriors who were exploring in the dark realm. They instantly fell to the ground and buried their heads in fear. It's too dangerous. It's getting dark. Captain, this is the depths of the dead realm. There can't be any survivors. Let's go back. The woman called Captain raised her head, and her eyes were sharp. She spat and said, "Then let's go back." After the rumbling subsided, the woman stood up like a carp. The others also stood up and dusted off their clothes that were covered in black debris. Just as they were about to leave, the woman turned around and inadvertently glanced at something. Suddenly, she let out a soft cry of surprise and pointed at a black stone not far away. "Why does the shape of this stone look like a person?" After saying that, the woman ran over to confirm without saying anything. The others suddenly laughed. "Captain, are you crazy about finding a survivor?" "Yes, that is a stone. How can it be a person?" "If it is a person, I will perform to eat sh*t." The woman walked to the black stone, gently touched the hard surface of the stone, and then knocked on it. The stone suddenly made a dull echo. "Hollow." The woman's eyes turned cold. Without saying anything, she used her strength and slammed on the stone. Crack! The last person's eyes widened, and he immediately swallowed the second half of his words. He ran over and said, "Captain, let me help." The others also stopped joking and ran to help break the stone. The woman captain looked serious. After hesitating for a moment, she reached her hand into the stone cave and pulled out a corner of the black gauze. Her face immediately changed, and she ordered, "Quick, clean the head of the survivor as fast as possible." After a while, the stone was finally completely removed. The people were so tired that they sat around the stone and panted. "Damn, this stone is too hard. I'm a level 5 warrior, but I am exhausted." The bearded man complained incessantly. Another tall and thin man waved his hand weakly. "Captain, look, are there really survivors inside? I'm afraid that we have opened the coffin of an ancient existence, right?" The woman captain was obviously stronger, but her chest was rising and falling. She nodded and waved her hand. The thick black debris was immediately removed, revealing the true appearance of the survivor in the black stone. A girl's pale face without a trace of blood entered everyone's eyes. The black lotus mark at the corner of her eye made her already mysterious look even more strange. The woman captain was stunned. Looking at the girl's calm and beautiful face, she could not help but feel her scalp go numb, and sweat appeared on her back. Could it be that because of the earthquake, the coffin was shaken up, and they accidentally dug up an incredible grave? "I do not mean to offend you. Don't blame me. Don't blame me." The bearded man was not very courageous. At this moment, seeing such a horrifying scene, he was so scared that he knelt on the ground and cowed out. The woman captain could not help but laugh, and the tense atmosphere relaxed a lot. Another female warrior looked at the girl's face and could not help but sigh. So beautiful. She must be in existence with a very high status. She has been dead for so long, but there is no decay. It is also very likely that it is the effect of the dead realm. The tall and thin male warrior seemed to be very courageous. He looked at the girl's face and stretched out his hand to open her mouth. I heard that those noble existences would put precious funerary objects in their mouth. "Let me see." "No." The woman captain was very unhappy to stop him, but it was too late. The tall and thin male warrior stopped himself and slowly raised his head. His face was full of horror, and even with a hint of sobbing, "Captain, can the dead breathe?" "Huh." As soon as these words came out, the bearded man seemed to explode. He scrambled to the woman's side. "Sister's corpse came back to life. Look at how useless you are." The woman captain laughed angrily. She walked over and pulled the stiff, tall, and thin man away. She put her finger to the girl's nose and really felt the flow of breath. "She's still alive?" The person who was buried in the stone, for who knows how long, is still alive? She looked at the girl's face in a daze. Suddenly, she did something that made the whole team extremely horrified. "Captain, why are you carrying her?" The tall and thin man's voice was trembling as if he had seen the most terrifying scene in his life. The bearded man's legs went soft, and he collapsed to the ground. "Since she is alive, we can't leave her here." The woman frowned and scolded the bearded man. "Li Zhuang, are you a man? If you cry again, I will leave you here." The bearded man immediately shivered. He wiped his tears and stood beside the tall and thin man. Another female warrior saw this and shook her head. She walked to the woman's side and could not help but complain, "Dazhuang, sister is still more terrifying, right?" The woman immediately glared at her. She stuck out her tongue and stretched out her finger to poke the girl's sleeping face on the captain's shoulder. Looking at the girl's curly eyelashes, her heart was about to melt. So cute. The bearded man and the tall and thin man saw this scene and looked at each other at the same time. They both saw the desire to cry in each other's eyes. Women are all devils. 2 hours later, the group walked out of the black area, and a simple small camp came into view. "The leader is back," someone shouted, and everyone ran to the gate to welcome them. Their eyes were filled with sincere loyalty and respect. The whole small camp added up to less than 100 people. They were all survivors who were fished out of the dead area by the leader. If it was not for the leader not going to the large camp and guarding here every day, they would have died long ago. Look, the leader saved another one. It's a little girl. So beautiful, so clean. She doesn't look like she was picked up from outside. Really, let me see. Seeing that there were more and more people, the female warrior immediately took a few steps forward and shouted, "Disperse, disperse. You only know how to eat melons every day. Hurry up and get to work." When everyone saw her, their expressions changed slightly, and they all dispersed. The female warrior smiled and turned back to look at the captain, who was still carrying the girl. The captain shook his head helplessly. "You all go rest." After saying that, she hesitated for a moment and carried the girl back to her own tent. The latest chapter of The Poisonous Wife. The Poisonous Wife's full text reading address. The Poisonous Wife's download address. The Poisonous Wife's mobile reading address. For convenience of reading next time, you can click collect below to record this. Chapter 636. Women are all devils. You can see it next time you open the bookshelf. If you like The Poisonous Wife, please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, WeChat, etc. Thank you for your support. Chapter 637. You can search Poisonous Wife in Baidu. Search for the latest chapter. In the tent, the woman put the girl in black dress on her bed, and then turned around to boil a basin of water and put it on the bed. Looking at the snow-white face on the bed, the woman's eyes flashed with inexplicable light. "Who are you? Why are you in a stone in the dead zone? The clothes you wear are not damaged at all, and I have never seen the style before." Even a fool knew that the girl in front of her was definitely not an ordinary person. Of course, the woman was not stupid. Looking at the girl's face, she was lost in thought. Then she thought of something and sighed in a low voice. She wrung the towel and was about to wipe the girl's face. Suddenly, she felt a grip on her wrist, and when she looked down, she saw a pale and withered hand with dried blood vessels grabbing her. The woman's face changed slightly. When she looked up again, she saw the girl lying on the bed was looking at her with a pair of black and pure eyes, full of vigilance and alertness. "Don't be afraid." The woman did not try to break away from her hand. She comforted her. "You are safe now. I saved you. You woke up soon after I came back." Suli frowned. She couldn't understand. She wanted to open her mouth to speak, but found that after the evil ghost exploded, although the surface injury had recovered, the internal injury had not improved at all, including the throat injury. Thinking about it, Suli was cautious and did not transmit the sound. She dipped her hand in the watermark on the bedside and wrote a line of words. "Where is this?" The woman looked at a row of scribbles on the bedside and was suddenly dumbfounded. Why were the words different? Was this girl really an ancient remnant? So you can't understand it either? The woman blurted out. Looking at Su Li's blank eyes, she patted her head again and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "I know you can't understand it, but I still say it. Fortunately, I just broke through to the 7th level a few months ago and produced the primordial spirit, so I transmitted the sound to you. I hope you won't be scared." As she said, she pinched a gesture rather unskillfully, and the intermittent sound of thought echoed in Su Li's mind. "Can you hear it?" Su Li felt strange. After a moment of silence, she nodded. "Great, I'm a first to use this." The woman breathed a sigh of relief and then transmitted the sound. "My name is Li Qing, the leader of this camp. You can rest here and don't worry about danger." Su Li wanted to ask where this place was, but she didn't want to expose herself prematurely because of the language barrier. Li Qing looked at Su Li's exposed dry arms and felt distressed. "What happened to you? Your face was pale and your blood vessels dried up, as if your blood was drained. How could you? How can you?" Recalling the memory before the coma, Su Li closed her eyes and shook her head. Seeing this, Li Qing smiled and comforted him. "It's okay if you don't remember. Many of the people I saved from the dead zone have lost their memories. You should rest first. When your injuries are better, someone will explain to you." At this point, Li Qing looked back at De Zhuang, who was waiting in front of the tent, and suddenly stood up. "I'm going to do something else. You rest well, and don't think too much." Su Li watched Li Qing leave. When she saw Li Dazhuang immediately pulled the tent cloth and ran away, as if he had seen a ghost. Su Li frowned slightly. Was it really another world? At the last moment of the evil ghost's self-explosion, she directly escaped into the nothingness and used the teleportation rune given by Huan. Then the wave of self-explosion poured over her. She felt black and didn't know anything. When she woke up again, she was already in this small camp. Thinking of this, Su Li reluctantly waved a warning restriction and then began to check the injury. The evil ghost's self-explosion for the second time, plus the teleportation, the scattered energy was difficult to recover, and it took a long time to regenerate. Her veins and arteries were all dried up, without a single drop of blood left. All the blood had been used on those venerable ones of the sage sect. Fortunately, that was the case. Otherwise, when Li Qing saved her, he would have already stepped into the gates of hell. Her pubic region was empty, leaving only the black lotus throne, which was dim. The original 4 divine thunders all disappeared, along with the perfect chakra and Su Bai. "Xiao Bai," Su Li frowned. She lured all the holy sects to bombard her together in order to integrate the divine thunder of the 5 elements into one. Only under the absolute pressure of external force could the divine thunder of the 5 elements put down the grudge against each other and integrate perfectly. This was what Qing Shui Nun learned from their brief communication when she gave her the perfect chakra. Originally, she only asked Su Bai to inject the power of a divine thunder, but Su Bai's whole body rushed into the perfect chakra. There was no contract relationship between her and Su Bai, so it was even more difficult to know whether he was dead or alive at the moment and where he was. Fortunately, she had refined the perfect chakra, and she could barely sense it. When her injury recovered, she might sense it more clearly. "Well, I should recover some strength first. Although Li Qing is not in danger, how can I fully believe it?" Thinking of this, Su Li put aside distractions, ran Suiyu tactics, and gradually settled. A few days later, Su Li's face was a little ruddy. Li Qing went out early and came back late every day. Seeing Su Li's change, she was also happy. In view of Su Li's special situation, she could only teach her words every day. Su Li finally knew that she really left Qing Shui Circle and came to Qimo Circle, the territory of blazing heaven. With her realm, she could learn the language of a circle in a moment. So in just 2 days, she had already figured out the rules of Qimo language, and writing and speaking were no longer a problem. However, she still did not speak. Through these days' understanding, she found that the cultivation culture of Qimo Circle was completely different from that of Qing Shui Circle. It was quite primitive, although Li Qing had the cultivation of Huashan Realm. In terms of application, she was even worse than the practitioners of Zhuji Realm in Qing Shui Circle. On this day, Li Qing was not in the camp again. Su Li put on the clothes given by Li Qing, opened the tent, and walked out for a walk. Not long after she walked out, the female warrior who guarded the camp today ran over quickly and said in surprise, "Hey, can you get out of bed and walk?" After saying that, she reacted and couldn't help but say, "I forgot." Captain said that you even forgot the language. Can you understand some simple words now? My name is Wu Rong, and I am one of the only 2 level 6 warriors in the camp. Wu Rong. Suli tried to speak, but she didn't deliberately restore her vocal cords, so her tone was still a little hoarse. Yes. My name is Wu Rong. Wu Rong was surprised. You are so smart. You have learned to speak in just a few days. What's your name? Do you remember? Suli was silent. Li Qing knew some details of her, but she said she lost her memory in front of others, so it was not appropriate to say her name. It doesn't matter if you don't remember. Wu Rong took Su Li's hand and dragged her out. I'll take you around. Although there are few people in the camp, and it is very peaceful, you are too small and beautiful. If I don't hold the fort, it is inevitable that some people will bully you unconsciously. Wu Rong didn't care whether Su Li could understand or not, or according to her reason, it was to exercise your hearing. She took Su Li around the camp. This did bring a lot of help to Su Li. After all, Li Qing's teaching was very one-sided. Only in the whole environment of the camp could she collect more words. Walking to the edge of the camp, Su Li saw that the protective wall outside the camp was just ordinary rock. She couldn't help but feel confused and asked aloud, "Why don't you build a better wall?" Wow, you can say a complete sentence? Wu Rong's eyes lit up. You are so talented. I can explain it to you, but I don't know if you can understand it completely. In fact, the whole camp has been moving, so there is no need to build a good wall at all. It will be abandoned soon. The captain should have told you about the dead zone, right? That's where we found you. Suli nodded. The dead zone was also the reason why Qi Tian wanted to lead the creatures of this circle to attack Qing Shui's circle. When she had just reincarnated, she had come to this world's passageway once. She had also met the cultivators of this world. At that time, she had found it very strange. Why did all the cultivators in this world think that they had to risk their lives for the sake of war? Sometimes, there was no need to throw away their lives at all. Until this moment, she understood. It turned out that every practitioner who attacked Qing Shui's circle was fighting for the next generation. The dead zone, named Sea Zone, was a zone of death. In the zone, no ordinary creatures could survive. They would be eroded to death in a few seconds. The dead zone was still expanding, gradually eroding every inch of land of Qimo's circle. Whether it was Qing Shui's circle or Qimo's circle, practitioners were always the minority of the minority. Most creatures were still ordinary mortals who had no resistance when the disaster came. But it happened that practitioners also reached the peak step by step for mortals. If there was no large base, there would only be one result of Qimo's circle: destruction. Because the captain wants more time to search for survivors, our camp is very close to the dead zone. So, every time the dead zone is too close, we have to move away. Suli nodded and turned to see the men who were still building the wall in full swing. Their faces were full of happiness. In the background of the disaster, it was the greatest happiness to have a place to live. Suddenly, Su Li's eyes were fixed. She walked quickly to the wall and bent down to pick up a black stone. When the men who were building the wall saw her, their eyes lit up and they were about to go up to her. But when they saw Wu Rong behind her, their expressions immediately changed. They immediately buried their heads in their work, and the bricks under their hands moved even faster. Humph! You are sensible. Otherwise, if you dare to bully our little sister, I will beat you lazy guys to sh*t. Wu Rong walked to Suli angrily and asked, "Building the wall is the hardest work. Usually, it is the men who have made mistakes in the camp. What are you doing here?" Suli pointed to the crystal clear black stone in her hand and asked, "What is this?" "This." Wu Rong scratched her head and turned over the stone under her feet. She also picked up a bigger black stone and said, "Isn't this kind of stone just an ordinary stone? You can pick it up everywhere around the camp. The closer you are to the dead zone, the more there are. The dead zone is full of them. Black debris is the easiest to dirty the clothes." Suli was silent on the spot. The latest chapter of Poisonous Wife, the full text of Poisonous Wife, the download of Poisonous Wife, the Poisonous Wife. For the convenience of reading next time, you can click Collection below to record this time. Chapter 637. Healing You can see it when you open the bookshelf next time. If you like Poisonous Wife, please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, WeChat, etc. Thank you for your support. Chapter 638. You can search Poisonous Wife in Baidu. Search for the latest chapter. In the eyes of Wu Rong and the people of Chimo Circle, this might be an extremely ordinary stone. But in Su Jiuzhou's eyes, its pneuma was exactly the same as that of the 12th grade Black Lotus she saw in the cottage in Immortal Ascension City. The difference was only the strength of the pneuma. Yi Che, the talent of Ghost Clan, guarded the 12th grade Black Lotus for 40,000 years, which showed how precious it was. But in Chimo's circle, it was everywhere. Suli was surprised and pleasantly surprised. If what Wu Rong said was true, although these gravel couldn't make her remaining 6th grade Lotus stand manifest with enough Black Lotus, the remaining 12th grade Black Lotus transforming sword might be nurtured in a very short time. She hoped that the legendary secret skill of prehistoric Ghost Clan would not disappoint her. Thinking of this, Suli put down the stone in her hand and said, "I want to go outside alone." "Go outside?" Wu Rong was shocked. "There is no danger outside during the day, but you are alone. I will walk around and come back soon." Suli smiled and turned away. Although Wu Rong was very worried, the captain was not at home, and she had to take care of the camp. She could only tell her again and again, "Then you must walk around and don't go far." "I will." Looking at Su Li's back, Wu Rong scratched her head and murmured, "How long has it been?" "She can communicate with me without any obstacle." "Has her memory recovered?" The gate of the camp had been open during the day. Suli walked out directly and suddenly felt that the pneuma in the air had changed. There was a lingering death pneuma. Is it because the dead zone is too close? Suli guessed and looked up at the gloomy sky. It would take some time for her injury to recover, and it was still too difficult for her to fly in the air. After walking for a distance, she suddenly stopped and squatted down to rub the dust off her hands. She had only walked 300 meters away from the campsite, and the solid soil had turned into loose sand. There was no way to grow food on such soil. Naturally, mortals would not be able to survive and would face the danger of starvation. Li Qing's camp should be shrouded in a special field similar to an array formation. It's neither a restriction nor an array formation, and it's most likely unique to this world. I can't understand it, but it's probably because of the harsh living environment. While thinking, Suli got up and continued to walk forward. Although she did not fly, her walking speed was definitely much faster than that of Li Qing. But in a moment, the sandy land around her became hard rocks as dark as ink. They had arrived at the dead zone. Suli scanned with her divine awareness, and then her eyes focused. She flashed and appeared under a boulder. In the crack of the boulder, a palm-sized black lotus was quietly blooming, exuding a strong vitality that was incompatible with the dead zone. Born from the dead, Suli seemed to understand something. She reached out and plucked the black lotus. It was cold in her hand. After a while, the black lotus withered and drifted away, merging with the black debris all over the sky. With self-mockery in her eyes, Suli crushed the rhizome in her hand and sighed. "Even if you have such ability, but you are still too weak." Was she talking about Black Lotus or herself? Who could say for sure? Suli was not a sentimental person. Even though the unique way of life of Black Lotus made her sigh with emotion, it was only for a moment. Soon, Suli got rid of distractions and began to look for the gravel of Black Lotus. The pneuma of those that had become debris had already dispersed in the dead zone. She didn't want to expose it. It was not convenient for her to practice in the dead zone, so she could only find more black stones to take back. Fortunately, the universe ring in the Chimo circle could also be used. In the entire camp, she only saw one universe ring from Li Qing. She still remembered that the practitioner she met in the passage space told her that the universe ring was very precious in the Chimo circle and ordinary people couldn't have it. Li Qing just broke through the 7th level, Huashan realm, not long ago, so he was not qualified to get the universe ring when he was at the 6th level. But she indirectly asked Wu Rong that Li Qing always had the ability to store things with him before that. Coupled with the special means set up in the camp, she had to think about Li Qing's identity. It was not a good thing to expose it prematurely. Before nightfall, Su Li returned to the camp, but Li Qing hadn't come back yet. Seeing Su Li was intact, Wu Rong was relieved. She ran over and said, "You must be tired and hungry after going out for so long. Dinner is almost ready. Why don't you take a rest first?" Su Li nodded and was about to leave. Suddenly, she heard a noise at the door. Hearing the sound, she turned her head and saw Wu Rong's expression suddenly change slightly. Wu Rong rushed over and shouted, "Get out of the way!" Su Li also followed. Li Qing was covered with blood, and his face was pale. He was supported in the main tent by Wu Rong, who looked serious. Li Dazhuang and others also had some injuries, but they didn't look as serious as Li Qing. Black Lotus was a sacred object of Ghost Clan in Qing Shui Circle. Human Clan would naturally be hurt if they touched it. Li Qing had the pneuma of being eroded by Black Lotus. Anyway, Li Qing was equivalent to a warrior of Huashan realm. No matter how careless he was, it was impossible for him to be scratched by stones. Su Li's eyes flashed and followed into the tent. Li Qing had taken off all his blood-stained clothes and leaned on the bed tiredly. Seeing Su Li coming over, Wu Rong was flustered and shouted anxiously, "Come and help me. It's too slow for me to deal with it alone." Seeing Li Qing close his eyes and gasp more heavily than before, Su Li didn't hesitate and said, "What am I going to do?" Hearing this, Li Qing suddenly opened his eyes in surprise. Have you learned the language?" Su Li nodded and stared at Wu Rong's movements. Wu Rong pointed to the dense small wounds on Li Qing's body and said quickly, "We have to clean up all the wounds of the captain as soon as possible. The poison of the dead region is not a joke. If the captain takes it, his strength is likely to decline and there will be sequelae." Without saying anything, Su Li picked up the extra cloth and dipped it in water to wipe Li Qing's wounds. Every time she wiped a wound, she would secretly absorb the pneuma of Black Lotus. There were too many wounds on Li Qing's body. Under Su Li's deliberate control, it took her 2 hours to absorb the pneuma of Black Lotus from all the wounds. "Captain, how do you feel?" Wu Rong looked worried. At this moment, Li Qing's face had recovered a little ruddy. He smiled and nodded slightly. "Thanks to you too, I feel much more relaxed." "That's good." Wu Rong looked scared. "Captain, did you encounter a corpse monster today? How big is it?" Li Qing nodded with a slightly serious face and said in a stern voice, "Not big, only the size of a palm, but it is extremely fast. Go and prepare for it. We will move out early tomorrow morning." "Okay, I'm going now." Wu Rong left the tent without saying anything, and also took away the warriors who were still waiting in front of the tent to arrange the matters. Li Qing sensed the rapid recovery of the injuries in her body. She had been poisoned by the dead region, but she had never recovered so quickly. Although Su Li did it very secretly and she couldn't sense it, the only variable here was her. Since she didn't want to expose it, Li Qing didn't mention it. She just smiled and asked, "Can you communicate normally?" Su Li nodded and said frankly, "Yes, what hurt you?" "A monster in the dead region. We call it the corpse monster. It rarely appears in the periphery of the dead region. I usually only explore around the dead region." Speaking of this, Li Qing paused and said awkwardly, "Unless I get lost. Last time I got lost and went deep into the dead region, so I happened to meet you. Fortunately, I didn't encounter the corpse monster. Otherwise, we would all be finished." "Corpse monster? Are the dead people turned into monsters?" "No, not all of them are people. Many of them are animals, and their whole body is rotten and oozing pus, which is very terrible." Li Qing looked dignified. "I can meet it in the periphery, which means that the dead region is expanding again. When I first established the camp 30 years ago, the dead region only expanded once every 5 years. Now it has been shortened to 1 year. It is accelerating." Li Qing's eyes showed deep worry. I know that this world is not infinite. If one day the dead region occupies every inch of this world, where should we go? Su Li's eyes flashed. She couldn't answer Li Qing's question. After all, she was not in Qing Shui's circle. But although the breath of the Black Lotus was poisonous, it didn't have the effect of refining the corpse. It was just a pure ghost poison. There must be secrets in the dead region. After her injury recovered, she might go to explore it. But before that, Su Li sighed when she looked inside her body, which was still terrible. Li Qing thought that she was depressed about the current situation, so he comforted her. Leave those things to the big shots. Let's not talk about it. But you can learn a language in just 3 days. You must have a high cultivation, right? Speaking of this, Li Qing blinked and said cautiously, as if he was afraid to stimulate Su Li, "Can you tell me your name?" Su Li was stunned. Then she dipped her finger in water and wrote 2 words in the red demon language beside the bed. After writing, she raised her head and chuckled. "My name is Su Li. Su means awakening, and Li means dripping. Your name is really nice." Li Qing praised, then changed his mind and said, "Our camp is made up of less than 10% warriors, and most of them are low-level warriors. Your cultivation is definitely not low. Are you willing to stay in my camp and continue to search for survivors?" Su Li was silent for a moment and asked, "Haven't you thought about going to a large camp? Your personal strength is too small after all. If there is danger one day, such a camp will be wiped out with a little carelessness, and your efforts will be in vain." The smile on Li Qing's face immediately disappeared a little. She didn't know this, but she also had her difficulties. If it's inconvenient to answer, you don't have to say it. Su Li's still pale face showed some gentleness. "I'm happy to provide shelter for my savior. I'm not a savior. I just did what I could." Li Qing waved her hand embarrassedly. "By the way, I don't know how your injury has recovered recently." Su Li sensed for a while and shook her head and sighed. Now the injury has recovered less than 1%. The latest chapter of Poisonous Wife, the full text of Poisonous Wife, the download of Poisonous Wife, the Poisonous Wife. For the convenience of reading next time, you can click Collection below to record this time, Chapter 638. You can read it next time when you open the bookshelf. If you like The Poisonous Wife, please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, WeChat, etc. Thank you for your support. Chapter 639. You can search Poisonous Wife in Baidu. Search for the latest chapter. Less than 1 in 100. Li Qing looked at Su Li's serious expression and was stunned for a moment. Suddenly, she burst into laughter. She touched Su Li's head and said softly, "You should take care of yourself first. The situation is not so bad that you need to show up." Although she didn't know Su Li's cultivation, she was almost equal to an ordinary person with such an injury. Unless she was a supreme existence like the Sky-Burning Lord and the Deputy Lord. But Su Li was so young. How could it be possible? Su Li knew what Li Qing was thinking, but she didn't say much. She just said, "If there is anything I can do for you, just tell me." "Got it." Li Qing waved her hand. Su Li smiled and turned away. After she could walk, Li Qing naturally changed her residence. In order to take care of her, she asked Li Dazhuang to move and gave the tent next door to Su Li. Early in the next morning, Su Li was awakened by Wu Rong. "Little Li, are you still asleep? Get up." Wu Rong came in and pulled up Su Li, who had just pretended to lie down. She said, "Today, our camp will be moved 10 miles away. You're still injured. I am tired. I will help you pack up the tent." Su Li sleepily sat up and said, "Thank you. Don't mention it. You should put on clothes that are convenient for walking. We'll set off soon." Wu Rong smiled. Su Li nodded and took off the heavy soul robe. She suddenly felt relaxed. She almost forgot that this magic treasure still had a suppressive effect on her. When she was in the peak state, the heavy soul robe had already lost its original function. For her, it was only equivalent to a piece of clothing that was not easy to be torn. But now, Su Li smiled and took the heavy soul robe in her hand. She walked to the door and saw that it was still dark outside. More than 100 tents had been dismantled, Large and small packages were everywhere. Many men and women could be seen busy nervously in the fog of the night. These people probably began to pack up in the middle of the night. Except for her sensitivity to danger, she didn't care much about what happened in the camp. She didn't find it last night. It seemed that the space in Li Qing's cosmos ring was limited. Otherwise, he could have simply stored all the dead objects in the camp into the ring and taken them away. Such a long preparation time would not have been necessary. At this moment, a tall and thin warrior in his early 30s came over. He seemed to be a little embarrassed. He scratched his head and said with a smile, "Hello, my name is Dai Hechuan. Captain saved you that day, and I was also there. Your name is Su Li?" Su Li nodded and stared at Dai Hechuan with her clear eyes. "What can I do for you?" Dai Hechuan immediately blushed and stammered, "No, nothing, I just want to apologize. That day, I thought you were a character from an ancient tomb. I was too rude. Xiaochun, if you have time to talk with Sister Li outside, why don't you come in and pack your things?" The sound of Wu Rong gnashing her teeth came from the room. Dai Hechuan's expression changed slightly. He smiled apologetically and gave a fist and palm salute to Su Li. Then he immediately lifted the curtain and went in. "Sister Rong, I'm coming to help." Su Li turned around and looked at Dai Hechuan's flattering appearance. She couldn't help but feel a little funny. Dai Hechuan's cultivation was the same as Wu Rong's. Even if he was a little worse, the difference would not be too big. What made them a little afraid of Wu Rong? However, even if she was afraid, she could still see that Dai Hechuan's expression when he looked at Wu Rong was not fake at all. The circle of the whole camp was quite simple, which made her feel the long-lost simple and pure comradeship. Perhaps it was because of this that there was not much darkness in this small camp. Even in the secular world, dark and dirty things were always inevitable. But if there was a bright and kind person to guard this camp, the light of humanity would illuminate the dark corners, make the darkness retreat, and make it more beautiful. The only flaw was that Li Qing was too weak. Su Li looked back at the deep night outside the camp. She turned around and found an empty corner to enter Song Lei's cave. As soon as she entered the cave, Hong Baizhu cried and rushed to her. "Sister, Brother Su Bai is missing." At this moment, there was no disgust for Su Bai in her eyes, but concern and worry. "When are we going to find Brother Su Bai?" "Don't worry." Su Li squatted down and wiped the blood and tears from the corners of Hong Baiju's eyes. She said gently, "When my injury is fully recovered, I will soon find Brother Bai." Hong Baizhu responded with a heavy voice. She immediately raised her head and saw the first elder of the Ling family, who was floating over. At this moment, his body was much more solid than at the end of the divine awareness. It seemed that he had gained a lot of benefits from staying with Hong Baizhu. "Young, Su Li, my little friend, have you come to the Qimo Circle?" Although the first elder of the Ling family was in Song Lei's cave, he could see everything that happened in the outside world. Naturally, he knew Su Li's identity. He wanted to respectfully call her Madam of the Young Lord, but he changed his mind when the words were on the tip of his tongue, for fear of making Su Li uncomfortable. However, with this relationship, he did not resist Su Li's proposal at all. Instead, he wanted to help Su Li get through the difficulties. Yes, the space-crossing rune played a role. Su Li nodded and accepted it. The first elder of the Ling family covered his chest with fear. It was too risky. "Su Li, my little friend, if the teleportation rune failed and you were seriously injured on the spot, you would become the meat in the hands of Bai Mo." Su Li's eyes flashed, and her voice was calm. "There is no if in everything. If I don't do it without full confidence, I have died many times." The first elder of the Ling family sighed and said, "You are right. Since you have come to the Qimo Circle, you may find a place to practice with all your strength." The Qimo Circle began to decline in the era of the Lord of the Realm. In fact, the Dead Zone is not poisonous, nor is it a foreign invasion, but this circle is coming to an end and aging quickly. This may be an opportunity. The first elder of the Ling family's eyes were full of vigor. "I once heard from the Lord of the Realm that the Qimo Circle is coming to an end. Its environment is equivalent to being exposed in the big starry world, without the jurisdiction of any natural law. So, you can practice here without being suppressed by any rules. Su Li, if you have any skills that you haven't finished practicing, you can make good use of this time. Is there such a saying? Su Li was surprised. In the past few days, 80% of her energy was focused on healing, and the remaining 20% was absorbing the pneuma of the Black Lotus. She only practiced Suiyu tactics occasionally, so she really didn't notice this change. After practicing Suiyu tactics for many years, she still stayed in the second jade membrane realm. But even so, it made her physical strength improved a lot, and it could shield her from the detection of the natural law to a certain extent. If she could practice to the third, fourth, or even the highest level, even she was looking forward to the effect. Thank you for telling me, First Elder. Su Li thanked him sincerely, and the First Elder was a little embarrassed. Although he understood that Su Li's life was ruined by Mo, his young master also made a lot of sins. He hadn't seen the young Lord Su Buwang yet, and he didn't know whether he inherited the bloodline of the Ling family. After Su Li said goodbye to the First Elder, she came to the island where Su Bai usually lived. Originally, it was just a barren dead place, but under the influence of Su Bai, it became a place full of vitality. In the center of the island, the pneuma of the divine thunder of wood was still very strong. A trace of green thunder entered the body through the pores, giving rise to a feeling of numbness and stimulating the production of new blood. This place was extremely good for her healing. Su Li sat cross-legged, and Suiyu tactics disappeared automatically. Ghost Valley meditation direction suddenly ran, and the energy of the thunder wandering around was suddenly attracted, wrapped Su Li in it, and turned into a green light cluster. She didn't want to use the thunder ability left by Su Bai, but the upcoming unknown danger made her have to take precautions early. Who knew if there was a higher existence in the corpse monster that Li Qing mentioned? At this moment outside, Li Qing stood in the center of the camp, looking at the sun that was about to rise in the sky, and felt slightly relaxed. The night was probably spent safely. She reached out and touched the universe ring. Seeing the full storage space in it, she sighed softly and issued an order. The rest of the luggage will be divided equally by all the strong young people. The old, the young, the sick, and the weak will help each other. She knew that some people would die because they couldn't hold on in this migration, but in order to save everyone, she had to be ruthless. Thinking of this, Li Qing turned her head to look at a dozen warriors on the other side, and her eyes became sharp. Wu Rong, Dai Huchun, you two will lead the way, and Da Zhuang will lead the other low-level warriors in the middle, and I will bring up the rear, understand? Yes. Everyone shouted in unison. Captain, I will lead the way. Don't worry, I promise to find an absolutely safe place to stay. Wu Rong smiled confidently. Suddenly, she sensed the light of dawn dimming again and couldn't help but tilt her head to look in the direction of the dead zone in confusion. This time, her usually smiling face was instantly distorted because of fear, and her voice trembled uncontrollably. Captain behind! Li Qing's heart thumped, and countless scenes flashed in her mind. Finally, her memory stopped at the moment when the large camp with the honor of Qiansheng was destroyed many years ago. Her father's heavy sigh faintly sounded in her ears. The sun doesn't rise every day. Li Qing slowly turned around and looked at the huge, strange shadow that was half a body taller than the wall. Her memory flashed a few days ago, and her lips couldn't help but tremble. Giant corpse? How could it be impossible? I clearly set up a concealment rune array, and this is just the periphery of the dead zone. Impossible. Jia. Two completely different voices came out of the giant corpse's mouth. Li Qing then saw a palm-sized monster lying next to the giant corpse's mouth. It was the corpse that had attacked her a few days ago. At this moment, she understood everything. What she had encountered was not an ordinary corpse, but a high-level corpse with intelligence. It was it that had attracted the giant corpse. Li Qing's eyes were red, and she felt a wave of despair. Familiar and painful memories were dug out from the deepest part of her mind by the giant corpse in front of her. They were of the same level, but the giant corpse in front of her was not any weaker than the one that had destroyed her father's camp. Its strength was at least at the 8th level, crossing tribulation, and her father had been killed by the giant corpse with one slap. She was just a little 7th-level martial artist. What could she do? The latest chapter of The Poisonous Wife. The Poisonous Wife's full-text reading address. The Poisonous Wife's download address. The Poisonous Wife's mobile reading address. For the convenience of reading next time, you can click Collect below to record this time, Chapter 639. You can read the record next time you open the bookshelf. If you like The Poisonous Wife's above, please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, WeChat, etc. Thank you for your support. Chapter 640. You can search for Poisonous Wife on Baidu. You can search for the latest chapter. The corpse monster seemed to enjoy everyone's frightened and sluggish expressions. It was not in a hurry to destroy the camp. It just gently pushed the wall, and the wall collapsed. Rubble rolled down, and some people could not avoid it in time and were directly buried in the rubble. Run! Run away! Screams rang out. Many people panicked and ran in all directions. The corpse monster's laughter became more and more cheerful. Li Qing took 2 steps in the opposite direction. Her eyes were red, and she stared at the corpse monster with eyes full of hatred. I'll cover you. You take everyone and leave. Li Dazhuang's eyes immediately turned red, and he hugged Li Qing's thigh. No, sister, you're the only family I have left. Wu Rong, take him away. Li Qing shouted, and Wu Rong was immediately alerted. She stepped forward, knocked Li Dazhuang out, and casually threw him to Dai Hechuan. Then, she made up her mind and walked to Li Qing's side. Although she had never seen such a huge corpse monster in front of her in her life, she still smiled and showed her white teeth. How long can you delay it by yourself? I'll stay. Dai Hechuan, you'll be the camp leader in the future. You must take everyone out of here alive. Do you hear me? Get out of here. Dai Hechuan's smile was uglier than crying. He looked back 3 times with Li Dazhuang on his back, but in the end, he gritted his teeth and disappeared into the night with Li Dazhuang on his back. The giant corpse was still not in a hurry. Looking at the direction where Dai Hechuan disappeared, the little corpse monster lying next to its mouth showed a strange expression, as if it was smiling. There were only 2 people left in the camp, and the ground was full of supplies that had not been taken away. At this time, Wu Rong was not nervous anymore. She smiled and said, Captain, I know you have an unusual past, and you've even seen the giant corpse before. Where's its weakness? Li Qing took a deep breath. She could still vaguely remember that during the catastrophe, an ice-blue figure fell from the sky and instantly froze the giant corpse into an ice sculpture. Little girl, next time you encounter this kind of giant corpse, just run away. Don't think that I can kill it. It's impossible. But no one knows what will happen in the future. Who knows if you'll be stupid enough to fight a giant corpse one day. Its weakness is the black area on its chest. The stronger the giant corpse, the smaller the black area. Got it? Thinking of this, Li Qing was about to say something, but the giant corpse suddenly raised its arm to hit them again. Her pupils shrank, and without saying a word, she hugged Wu Rong and rolled to the side. Rumble. There was a loud noise between heaven and earth as the ground shook violently. Countless materials exploded into powder. An extremely deep crack extended from the giant corpse's feet into the depths of the night. Wu Rong crawled up and stared blankly at the crack that was only a few inches away from her right foot. She couldn't help but shiver. If it weren't for the captain's quick reaction, she would already be a dead person. Puff! Li Qing propped her upper body up and spat out a mouthful of blood. Her heart was filled with despair. She had only been brushed by the aftershock, and she had been severely injured. This kind of enemy, how could she defeat them? Is it the giant corpse's Achilles heel? Captain, the Achilles heel is so small. The giant corpse's palm can cover it. Li Qing covered Wu Rong's mouth. Looking at her anxious expression, she took a deep breath. If we don't succeed, we die. If we don't succeed, we die, Wu Rong muttered to herself. Looking up at the approaching giant corpse, The shadow of death gradually shrouded her heart. The hope of success was too small. Li Qing wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth and turned around to cover Wu Rong's movements. Seeing the shadow of fear gradually approaching, she emptied her mind. Hundreds of years of life, from childhood to now, kept flashing before her eyes. At this moment, the corpse monster suddenly stopped. Now, Wu Rong suddenly flashed behind Li Qing, raising her hand. A special crossbow arrow shot out from her sleeve. Then with a snap, the corpse monster caught the arrow in its hand, broke it, and threw it to the side. How can this be? Wu Rong suddenly felt cold, her mind blank. Li Qing saw the corpse monster stop. Even if it was provoked by the crossbow arrow, it did not move forward. She couldn't help but feel strange. Suddenly, she noticed that the gaze of the corpse monster was behind her. She couldn't help but look back. At this time, she saw a thin figure standing not far from her. "Suli," Li Qing exclaimed with disbelief in her eyes. "Why didn't you leave with him?" Suli looked calm. She walked to Li Qing and squinted at the giant corpse. She whispered, "If I leave, I will lose 2 lifesavers." Wu Rong came to her senses and saw Suli. She looked excited. "But even if you stay, what's the difference between that and death?" Suli made a decision. She stared at the giant corpse and transmitted the sound. "You said its weakness is the black mark on its chest?" Li Qing heard the transmission and finally confirmed that Suli was not simple, but didn't mean anything. What's more, Li Qing's worry surfaced in her words. "But your injury?" Before Li Qing finished her words, she saw the figure in front of her suddenly disappeared. She suddenly turned her head, only to see the last scene of Su Li punching the giant corpse. Boom! A huge black shadow was sent flying by a huge force and disappeared in front of the 2 people who were shocked. Then, before the 2 people came to their senses, Su Li had returned to her original place with no expression. She put an isolation inhibition in the bodies of the 2 people and disappeared quickly. It didn't take long for the giant corpse to come again, but its appearance was not the same as the previous one. It was taller, and a palm-sized corpse monster was hanging in its mouth. Looking at the empty camp, the little corpse monster sniffed hard, but it could not sense Li Qing's breath again. Squeak, 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 squeak. After screaming for a while, the little corpse monster had to give up and leave. After Su Li ran for a few miles with Li Qing and Wu Rong, she sensed that the threatening breath behind her disappeared. She was relieved. The injury this time was too serious. It could not be recovered in just a few days. Even with the help of Su Bai's remaining divine thunder, she could only temporarily suppress the injury. That punch was her full strength. If there was another giant corpse, she would also die on the spot. So, she made a prompt decision. After punching the giant corpse with all her strength, she put the inhibition on the 2 people and immediately ran away. After slowing down and putting down the 2 people who were confused, Su Li snorted and couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. She was about to fall down. "Su Li," Li Qing quickly held her, grateful and worried. How do you feel?" She was really afraid that Su Li's blow would exhaust her vitality. Su Li resisted the dizziness and squeezed a smile. "I'm fine. The main force is in front of me. This time, run away a little farther so that I have more time to heal." After saying this, Su Li fainted. Song Lei's cave was also opened at the same time. If there was really unpredictable danger, Hong Baizhu would also appear to help her. But the rules of Qi Mo circle changed. According to the first elder of Ling family, if ghosts appeared in the world without rules, they would be seriously injured immediately. This was also the reason why she could only fight alone. Sister Hong Baizhu stood at the door of Song Lei's cave, staring at Su Li's sleeping face and clenching her little hands. She had never seen her sister in such a mess. She hoped that she could help at this moment, even just a little bit. Li Qing helped Su Li wipe the nearest blood, gently carried her on her back, and touched Wu Rong, who was still in a daze. She smiled and said, "Let's go and catch up with Da Zhuang and others. We will directly change the route to the nearest hemp camp." Wu Rong was still replaying the scene of Su Li blowing the giant corpse away in her mind. Hearing this, she came to her senses and seemed to know Li Qing again. She exclaimed, "Captain, don't you hate Qianxing Camp the most?" Li Qing sighed and said, "Most of the camp supplies were lost, and even the rune matrix was not taken. How can we continue to feed people? Moreover, Su Li also needs a safe environment to heal." Speaking of this, Li Qing was silent for a moment and said, "We can't protect her alone." "Yes," Wu Rong replied. "That's great. Su Li said that Da Zhuang and others are in front of us. Let's catch up and change the route together." Okay. 10 days later, Su Li woke up slowly, but what she saw was not the familiar camp, but the roof of a wooden house. She lay still and ran the Ghost Valley meditation direction automatically. She had almost healed the recoil injury caused by the bombardment of the giant corpse that day. The injury had been delayed for 10 days, but did not worsen under her extremely strong physical recovery ability. "Su Li, you finally wake up." At this time, Li Qing came from outside the door with a surprised face. At this moment, she had changed into an ordinary costume and hid her pneuma. On the surface, she only looked like a warrior of the 4th or 5th level. Su Li had a plan in her mind and asked, "Where is this place?" Li Qing put a bowl of steaming broth on Su Li's bed, sat down and said, "Have you heard of Qianxing Camp?" Su Li shook her head. Except for the news she heard from Li Qing and others, she knew nothing else about Qimo Circle. Li Qing smiled and said, "It is not so mysterious. Qiancheng is the large camp you asked me about a few days ago. In this circle, there are dead zones raging. In order to survive, our human clan will naturally produce large human settlements. There are countless large camps in the whole Qimo Circle, but only 1,000 are guarded by strong people. These 1,000 camps of strong people are called Qiancheng. This is a place called Ma Camp." When Li Qing said this, her tone became a little low. "We were delayed on the road for 6 or 7 days. The survivors were dead and dressed up. Finally, only the young people insisted to come here. The camp guards saw that we were not weak, so they all let us go. This is a temporary residence for those who have not yet been verified." Su Li's eyes flashed, and she asked, "Verification of ability?" Li Qing nodded and said in a deep voice, "Yes, large camps will not keep idle people. You will be assigned to work according to your ability. Otherwise, how can you support the operation of the camp?" Speaking of this, Li Qing smiled again. "After your injury is healed, you may even be able to compete for the deputy head of the camp." The latest chapter of The Poisonous Wife, the full text of The Poisonous Wife, the download of The Poisonous Wife, The Poisonous Wife. For the convenience of reading next time, you can click Collection below to record this time, Chapter 640. You can read it next time when you open the bookshelf. If you like The Poisonous Wife, please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, WeChat, etc. Thank you for your support. Chapter 641. You can search for Poisonous Wife in Baidu. You can search for the latest chapter. Deputy Leader? Su Li shook her head and laughed. "Why do I want that? Your injury should not be healed. Go to heal your injury early." "Well, there are not many rules in Qianxing Camp. We can live here for a month. If we delay any longer, we will be driven out," Li Qing reminded, and Su Li nodded to show that she understood. Time flew, and half a month passed. During this half month, Su Li spent 80% of her time on healing. She knew very well that the crisis had not been resolved. The trouble was not the giant corpse, but the small corpse monster lying in the mouth of the giant corpse. That was the real reason why she chose to escape. Although she was in one of the famous Qiancheng camp at this time, she could not put her life in the hands of others. Only by being strong could she be confident. Perhaps because of the frequent use of Ghost Valley meditation direction and the special rules of Qimo Circle, she had new insights and breakthroughs in Ghost Valley meditation direction, which had been practiced to the highest realm during the healing. If the previous Ghost Valley meditation direction could only be regarded as a low-level holy method, now the grade of Ghost Valley meditation direction had reached the top level, and it could barely keep up with Su Li's combat power. Thanks to it, Su Li's healing speed had been greatly improved. In the first 10 days before the breakthrough, Suli could only recover 20% of her cultivation with all her strength. In just 5 days after the breakthrough, Suli directly recovered 80% of her injury. Only some internal injuries needed time to be resolved, and they did not affect her combat power. But the evil ghost had not recovered yet. Suli sat in front of the house with a veil, watching people coming and going. Her eyes narrowed slightly. She needed a lot of evil souls to replenish the evil ghost, but in Chimo's circle, it seemed that there was no such thing. At least, the evil ghost that had just been remolded was still hiding in the shadow weakly, and did not show any desire to eat. Without the help of the body of evil ghost, she lost the divine thunder of the 5 elements. If she did not use extraordinary means, her strength was at most between an ordinary junior emperor and a strong junior emperor. This was not the state she wanted. Since the evil ghost could not be recovered for the time being, Suli turned her attention to other means that could be improved. First was the destruction sword intent. After comprehending Yichei's notes, her understanding of the way of the sword had reached perfection. The next realm would be the legendary sword domain realm, where the swordless was better than the swordless. There was no shortcut. She could only rely on herself to explore. She could vaguely predict that it would take at least 10,000 years to break through this realm, which was too far away. On the other hand, even though the damage of the sword Dao was still extremely terrifying before she attained the sword domain realm, she lacked a flying sword that could carry her strength. Otherwise, her might would be greatly reduced. This method was not feasible. The sky prohibition and the ghost prohibition were strange and ever-changing. They were both very useful, but their limitations were also very obvious. They were not very lethal, and their speed was too slow. She could easily fall into a passive position. After thinking about it, Suli found that only the supernatural swordsmanship and Suiyu tactics could help her make a breakthrough. After absorbing the pneuma of the Black Lotus she picked up in the Dead region that day, although the Black Lotus had changed, it still needed a lot of stones to nurture the supernatural power. Fortunately, it was easy for her to absorb, and there was almost no obstacle. As long as there were enough stones, she could soon awaken the supernatural power. Since she took risks to break through to the second hurdle of Suiyu tactics, she had been staying at the peak of the second hurdle for years. She needed an opportunity to break through to the third hurdle. If the first elder of the Ling family was right, she could try it in the next few days. Thinking of this, Suli summoned Li Qing and others who had been waiting for them for several days and went to the entrance of the department to check their strength. The guard at the entrance seemed to have been waiting for them for a long time. When he saw Li Qing coming first, he was in awe. Then he glanced at Su Li and others and said, "I'm not busy today. You and your subordinates come with me." Li Qing saw that he seemed to misunderstand and was about to explain, but was stopped by Su Li. Li Qing had to give up and followed in, while transmitting the sound to Su Li. "The ordinary people in the camp have entered the camp a few days ago. They have no strength and can only stay in a temporary residence for half a month at most." Su Li nodded and saw the occasional disappointment and relaxation on Li Qing's face. The two contradictory emotions mixed together and became incomprehensible complexity. She didn't understand why Li Qing insisted and what it meant to give up at this moment. Everyone had their own sufferings, and there was no need to understand everything. Li Qing's strength as a warrior of the 7th level was obvious, and Li Dazhuang, Wu Rong, and others were at least warriors of the 6th level. Su Li also showed the strength of the 6th level at this moment. Such a team of warriors was the most popular in large camps, so they just went through the process casually and were allowed to enter the camp and become members of the hemp camp. Not long after, they entered the gate of the camp. The sky was still bright, so they could see the whole view of the camp. The whole hemp camp was like a mountain city, with a flat brick avenue nearly 40 or 50 degrees vertical in the middle. On both sides of the avenue, there were countless large and small houses distributed in a trapezoid shape. The closer to the top of the mountain, the higher the houses were. The overall architectural style was grayish-yellow, revealing a strong sense of simplicity. It was dusk at this moment. Su Li stood at the bottom of the avenue and looked up to see that the crowds of warriors on the avenue were still bustling and very prosperous. She held a brass round plate, on which the two words Su Li had just been engraved and was still a little hot. On the back, there was an ancient character Ma and the unique logo of the Qiansheng camp. This was the symbol of warriors of the hemp camp. Li Qing's identity round plate was silver, which looked more noble. Wu Rong leaned on Li Qing and touched the silver round plate with envy. She couldn't bear to put it down and said, "When can I also break through to the 7th level? The silver plate is so beautiful." Li Qing couldn't help but laugh and said, "In this large camp, warriors of the 7th level can only be regarded as upper middle level. You have a good talent, and I believe that you can break through soon. The identity round plate is just the appearance, just like Su Li. You should be careful when you walk in a camp. You can't offend people everywhere like before, or I can't protect you." "I know." Wu Rong stuck out her tongue and then peeped at Su Li. She witnessed that the giant corpse was punched away, so her mentality naturally changed. Although Li Qing didn't finish his words, she had understood the meaning. If she wanted to survive in the large camp, she must firmly hold on to Su Li. "What are you talking about?" Li Dazhuang was confused. Dai Huchuan glanced at the sky and scratched his head. "It's getting late. Should we find a place to live? There's a reception area for warriors in the large camp. We can get a place for free with our strength." Li Qing obviously knew the layout of the Qianxing camp very well. After looking around, he called everyone to join the crowd. At the same time, in the gray building at the highest point of the whole mountain city, the heavy door was slowly pushed open. A middle-aged warrior, who was travel-worn and vigorous, hurried in and put a diamond-shaped crystal shining with red light on the table with a dignified look. The slightly fat old man, sitting at the table, immediately raised his head and frowned. He slowly picked up the crystal, and his old face changed for a moment. He couldn't help but ask in a low voice, "Is it true?" "It's true." The middle-aged warrior's voice was cold and solemn, and his eyes were a little heavy. This was just sent by the scouts in the front. In order to test the diamond-shaped crystal, we lost several good warriors. The situation I worried about most still happened. The slightly fat old man sighed and grasped the diamond-shaped crystal in his hand. He walked to the floor-to-ceiling glass window and watched the lights of the whole mountain city gradually lit up. He suddenly said, 50 years ago, the Li camp was overturned overnight as if it happened yesterday." "Li Hong, what do you think?" When the middle-aged warrior heard the name Li Hong, he was silent for a long time, and then said in a hoarse voice, "Chief, I haven't used this name for many years." The slightly fat old man sighed heavily again. "It's just 50 years. In fact, you can't blame your father for the death of your sister. He has tried his best. The dead are gone. Even if you abandon the past, can you get over it? The barrier in your heart?" Li Hong's eyes were slightly red, and he couldn't speak. "We are warriors, not gods." The old man's eyes were complicated as he stared at the pitch-black night sky. Not every disaster can be predicted. When your father's camp suffered a disaster that year, no one could react in time. Even His Highness Realm Lord was a step too late. It was also because of that disaster that we found out that there are terrifying monsters like corpse spirits in the dead zone, and we have a way to prevent them. The intelligence of corpse spirits is not inferior to our human race, and they are even more cunning. Compared to corpse monsters, they are more advanced creatures, and they dominate everything in the dead zone. Although I don't understand the reason why the corpse spirits targeted your camp, but the old man lowered his head and looked at the crystal in his hand. "This time, it's our turn." Li Hong's eyes were instantly filled with hatred, and he said in a hoarse voice, "This time, I won't let the tragedy repeat itself." "Ha ha!" The old man turned around and laughed heartily. "Although your strength is not bad, it is still a corpse spirit after all. Even if the fish dies, it doesn't necessarily break the net. This is the first time the Realm Lord's diamond-shaped crystal has reacted. His Highness Realm Lord will not just stand by and watch, but we also need to be prepared." Li Hong took a deep breath and nodded his head. At this moment, the door was pushed open again, A young man who looked a little unreliable walked in with his legs splayed out. He had a smile on his face. "Old Ma, I've already contacted the Zhou barracks and the Wang barracks. The two closest camps to us, Zhou barracks and Wang barracks, will send warriors over tomorrow. They're all level 8 martial kings." The young man made a cross gesture, and then he saw Li Hong, and immediately came up to him with a smile. "Hey, isn't this our King Hongwu? Why are your eyes red? Old man, did you bully Uncle Hong?" The old man was about to praise the young man, but when he heard what the young man said, his old face immediately collapsed, and he opened his mouth to scold. "Go to hell. Go back to your mother of *Cur and cultivate." The young man looked hurt, and he said in a sad voice, "Old man, you burn the bridge after crossing the river, and throw it away after using it. People's hearts are not what they used to be in the past." The old man was immediately annoyed, and he picked up the inkstone on the side of the table and was about to smash it, but the young man immediately ran away, and before he left, he did not forget to say a few words. "Old man, just you wait. In no time, I will also be a martial king. I will not be weaker than anyone in that stupid mirror." The latest chapter of The Poisonous Wife. The Poisonous Wife's full text reading address. The Poisonous Wife's download address. The Poisonous Wife's mobile reading address. For the convenience of reading next time, you can click favorite below to record this time. Chapter 641, Martial Artists Are Not Gods. To read the record, and you will see it next time you open the bookshelf. If you like The Poisonous Wife, please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, WeChat, etc. Thank you for your support. Chapter 642. You can search Poisonous Wife in Baidu. Search for the latest chapter. "Lousy, you're an unfilial son." The old man's furious roar caused the entire house to tremble slightly. The martial artists who were busy in the other rooms all smiled bitterly when they heard this. "Well, from the leader's attitude, it seems like our family's clown young master has returned." Li Hong stood in front of the window, watching the dignified leader of Qianshan camp holding an inkstone and chasing after his son who was about to become the king of martial arts. He couldn't help showing envy and nostalgia in his eyes. In fact, he had already forgiven his father, but he couldn't forgive himself at that time. He was knocked out by his father without any help. When he woke up, he was in hemp camp. All the familiar people were gone, including his sister, Li Qingling. Li Qing. In the reception area for warriors, the steward with a smooth face looked at the young Li Qing and then showed a big smile. "Welcome. Welcome to join our hemp camp. We like young and strong people like you most. There are 5 people in your team. I will arrange a detached residence for you on the peak of Mountain City. What do you think?" "Thank you, steward." Li Qing nodded. She couldn't help but sigh inwardly. She was once the little princess of the Thousand City camp and had a noble status. Although she had never looked down on the martial artists who risked their lives in her own camp, she had never felt that they were anything special until she became them. The efficiency of the reception area for warriors was very high. It didn't take long for the steward to stop in front of a spacious and tall detached courtyard with Su Li and others. He handed the key to Li Qing. After Li Qing signed on the registration book, the procedure was finished. Su Li saw all this. Compared with Qing Shui's circle, which had all kinds of cultivation methods to support life, Qimo's circle was obviously more primitive. Even warriors lived with mortals in the same way. The rare experience made Su Li vaguely feel that her state of mind was improved. Maybe if time permitted, she could try to take the risk of going to the star path again. There were exactly 5 rooms in the courtyard. Su Li still adhered to her principle and chose the most inconspicuous one. Li Qing had no choice but to let her do it. After a short rest, everyone gathered again in the middle hall. "I haven't taken a hot bath for a long time." Wu Rong changed into the clean clothes provided by the hostel and stretched comfortably. "Captain, the treatment of martial artists is too good." Li Qingyan looked at everyone, except for Su Li, who was still wearing a black gauze dress and looked sick. Everyone else was refreshed. She nodded gently and said, "The operation rule of the Thousand City Battalion is a perfect circle." She repeated what her father had once told her to her team members. Warriors desperately protect ordinary people. So when we return to the camp, we naturally need to enjoy more than ordinary people. That's what we exchange with our lives. Ordinary people admire martial artists. Naturally, they would want to become martial artists as well. This way, they would be able to obtain an endless supply of martial artists' resources and maintain the peace and contentment of the entire camp. Wow, Wu Rong's eyes sparkled. Captain, you know so much. I admire you so much. Looking at Wu Rong's exaggerated expression, Li Dazhuang couldn't help but laugh out loud. Then, he was immediately rewarded with a slap on the head. With a pitiful expression, he said, I'm already stupid enough, and you still hit me. Dai Huchuan laughed, and then he was also violently beaten by Wu Rong. The team meeting immediately became a mess. Suli watched this scene quietly with a smile on her face. She seemed to see the Linley building a long time ago. Unfortunately, that kind of time would never return. At this moment, a figure flashed in front of her eyes. It was Li Qingyan who quietly left the main hall. Suli thought for a while and followed her. In the sky, the moon was bright and the stars were sparse. In the place covered by the dead region, there was not a single star. Even so, Li Qingyan still liked to watch it. The starry sky at night was really beautiful. Hearing the footsteps behind her, Li Qingyan sighed and turned her head. Her eyes were bright and gentle. Suli, would you like to listen to my story? Suli smiled slightly, and her voice was rarely soft. I'd like to hear the details. Li Qingyan's life experience was very simple. She grew up with her parents. As the daughter of the leader of the 1,000 City Battalion and the younger sister of the genius brother, she never knew what was sorrow until a disaster came without warning. All the beauty was lost in an instant. After I woke up, I was with many wandering warriors. It was the captain of the Wandering Warrior Squad who saved me. Li Qingyan's tone was very light. He was determined to save more survivors in the dead region. He taught me a lot. Although my talent was not as good as my brother, it was not worse. In just 20 years, I became the same as him from a 4th-level warrior to a 6th-level warrior. Then we met the corpse monsters. It seemed that painful memories were evoked. Li Qingyan's eyes instantly turned red. She said, I don't know where it was. I only know that there were a lot of corpse monsters. I saw so many corpse monsters for the first time. I was completely confused. I didn't even know how I escaped. In the end, I was alone again. I didn't lend a helping hand to my father at that time. I was very resistant to other 1,000 City battalions. Besides, I also wanted to inherit the captain's unfulfilled wish, so I set out on the road alone again. Maybe I was lucky enough to run a small camp in 30 years. Li Qingyan smiled and said, but it was an illusion after all. As long as I met the corpse monsters, everything was broken. Fortunately, because of you, I don't have to face too much guilt. Thank you. You don't have to thank me. I was also saved by you. Suli shook her head gently. She turned her eyes to the sporadic lights at the foot of the mountain and said calmly, you have to be mentally prepared. What? Li Qingyan was stunned. Before she spoke, Suli said again, it is likely to repeat the same mistakes here. What? Li Qingyan's pupils suddenly shrank. Countless tragic scenes flashed in front of her. Suli looked serious. She said, I have no evidence. But based on my feeling, the small corpse monster you met is not simple. I can still smell its faint breath on you, so I made some means to isolate its scents. But as long as it is still alive, it won't take long to expand the search. We can find this place. Li Qingyan's face turned pale. She gasped violently. How could this be? It has been 50 years. Obviously, that thing has been killed by the lord of the region. What is it? The corpse monster. Suli raised her eyebrows. It turned out that the small corpse monster had another name. No, I must tell the leader of my battalion about this. Seeing her leave, Suli did not stop her. Li Qingyan was very smart. She was a survivor of the disaster that year. It was easy to think of the reason for finding the corpse monster. Suli believed that she would not spill the beans and cause trouble for herself. Of course, more importantly, her injury was almost recovered, but her strength was still at a low level. She was not sure to deal with the so-called corpse monster alone, so she needed help. After all, according to Li Qingyan, it was the lord of the region who finally took action and eliminated the hidden danger. That was to say, it was Qitian. Qitian's strength was absolutely at the level of the great emperor. Before she was injured, she might be able to fight, but now her strength was too weak. Back in her room, Su Li did not continue to consolidate the improved injury. Finally, she focused all her energy on Suiyu tactics. Not long after the end of the Tianjiao battle, she had already understood the third realm of Suiyu tactics. But because she frequently walked among holy sects, she had no energy to take care of it, so the progress of her cultivation was slowed down. Now, she was in a different realm and could not go back to Qingshui Circle for the time being. It was useless to think too much. Finally, she had time to practice. Nothing happened that night. In the morning of the next day, Su Li's door was knocked, which immediately woke her up. She got up and opened the door, only to see Li Qingyan's gloomy face outside the door. Su Li raised her eyebrows and said, "You didn't see him?" Li Qingyan nodded and glanced outside the door. Then she entered the room and closed the door. She sneered. "Everything went well in the camp yesterday. I thought there were not so many dirty things in the camp. However, I still underestimated human nature. The captain stationed on the top of the mountain. Such an important position. I don't know how many people's important information was blocked by him. Such a person deserves to die. What did that person say? What is his strength?" Su Li's tone was calm. Li Qingyan came to her in the morning. Although she didn't say it explicitly, she was asking for help. He hinted me to give him 10,000 jades. Jades are different from the gold currency circulated among ordinary people. They are high-level currency used by warriors for practice. I have used up all the jades in my daily practice. I can't take them out at all. Li Qingyan was very angry. I inquired about the captain. His name is Ding Zhang. He is only a warrior in the 6th level. He acts on his master's power. I see. I will go. If the head of the camp summons you later, you have to think about what to say. After Su Li finished speaking, she pushed the door and left. Li Qingyan stared her back. Her eyes were full of gratitude. She didn't know how much Su Li's injury had recovered. But since Su Li wanted her to continue to hide her strength, she must have not recovered from her injury. It was really inappropriate to expose her. She was not a fool. Su Li was their backer. If Su Li was exposed and had an accident, all of them would be in trouble. She had already thought about how to tell the head of the Ma camp. After Su Li left the courtyard, she scanned the surroundings with her divine awareness. As expected, she sensed that someone was secretly watching her. She smiled slightly and deliberately walked to a remote dark alley. Plop, plop. After several sounds of her body hitting the ground, Su Li walked out of the alley as usual and walked to the top of the mountain. When she walked to the gate built at the top of the mountain, a middle-aged warrior with a curly beard came out to stop her. He scolded, "This is the restricted area of the Ma camp. Irrelevant people, get out." Su Li looked at him and said calmly, "I have important information to explain to the head face to face." As soon as she said that, the middle-aged warrior immediately laughed. He looked at Su Li and said sarcastically, "How dare a weak female warrior like you say that she can get important information? Why don't you say that a sow can fly to the sky?" Ha ha! All the guards burst into laughter. Su Li was still expressionless, as if she didn't hear it. She was so calm that it was creepy. "What's the noise?" Suddenly, a rebuke came from the top of the mountain. All the laughter stopped abruptly. The latest chapter of The Poisonous Wife: The Poisonous Wife: The Poisonous Wife: The Poisonous Wife. For the convenience of reading next time, you can click collect below to record this time. Chapter 642. Next time you open the bookshelf, you can see it. If you like The Poisonous Wife, please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, WeChat, etc. Thank you for your support. Chapter 643. You can search Poisonous Wife in Baidu. Search for the latest chapter. Su Li raised her eyebrows and saw that the person was a middle-aged man in cyan warrior suit. His pneuma was equal to that of nature's test. If she guessed right, He was the Lord of Martial Arts of this camp. Seeing that it was the Lord of Martial Arts who asked in person, the middle-aged man immediately opened the door. "Ding Zhang greets you, Lord." Li Hong glanced at Su Li in the door and frowned. "What's the matter?" Ding Zhang didn't dare to tell the truth and said, "Lord, there's a weak female warrior who comes to make trouble. We are going to drive her away. She is so thin that she can be blown away by a gust of wind." Li Hong didn't want to wait for Ding Zhang's explanation. When he was about to leave, a voice suddenly came from the awareness sea. "You're leaving? No wonder there are people like Ding Zhang." Li Hong stopped abruptly, as if he had stepped on Ding Zhang's heart. He turned around and strode toward the door. Ding Zhang suddenly panicked. "Lord, you're busy. Why do you waste your energy on such a weak person?" Li Hong looked at him and sneered. "You call a warrior of the 7th level weak? Who are you?" Ding Zhang was stunned. A warrior of the 7th level? That being Sprout? He looked like a warrior of the 3rd or 4th level. Li Hong walked to Su Li and asked in a gentle tone, "What are you doing here?" Su Li glanced at Ding Zhang, whose face was pale, and said with a chuckle, "In fact, it is not me who is in trouble, but our captain. She came here last night and was also stopped and asked for 10,000 jades." Ding Zhang's face turned pale, and he said angrily, "You are slandering me. When did I do this kind of thing? You are slandering me." Su Li didn't look at him. She just stared at Li Hong and continued, "The witnesses are in the dark alley not far from the accommodation of the warriors. They should not wake up. With your power, I believe you can find them soon." Hearing this, Li Hong took a deep look at Ding Zhang, who was completely panicked. He immediately turned his head and said, "Let's go in and talk. Someone will deal with Ding Zhang." Su Li nodded and followed Li Hong into the gate. Ding Zhang's eyes were lifeless as he slumped to the ground. The architectural style of Chimo's circle was quite different from that of Qingshui's circle. Most of them were ordinary attics instead of halls. Even the head of Hemp Camp lived in such a place. Su Li followed Li Hong and looked all the way. Suddenly, she raised her head and stared at his side face. She didn't notice it before, but now she saw the outline of his face at a close distance. "What's your name?" Li Hong was speechless. He had never seen such a disrespectful female cultivator. She clearly knew that he was a martial king, yet she did not show any respect. However, he was not a vain person, so he replied, "Li Hong." Su Li narrowed her eyes and transmitted the sound in silence. "Li of Li Camp?" Thud. Li Hong stopped for a moment. Then he took Su Li to his study and slammed the door. He grasped Su Li's shoulder tightly and looked nervous. "Are you a survivor that year?" Su Li gently pushed his hand away and turned around to look at the study. She said, "I was indeed rescued from the dead region, but not from your Li camp." Li Hong was suddenly disappointed. He was absent-minded and didn't notice why Su Li, who was only a warrior of the 7th level, could push his hand away. He was a martial king anyway. After taking a deep breath, he regained his usual calmness and asked, "What information do you need to say here?" Su Li looked calm and spat out 2 words, "Corpse essence." Li Hong was nervous again. "You met each other? Can you come back alive?" "Of course, there are some who didn't come here alive," Su Li perfunctorily said. Li Hong didn't hesitate and said directly, "I will take you to see the head." Su Li shook her head and said, "I said before that I just came to see if I could come in on behalf of our head. I don't know much." "Then take me to see your head." Li Hong frowned. "No one dares to stop him as long as I am here." Su Li suddenly smiled and said meaningfully, "You are very lucky today." Li Hong's heartbeat accelerated slightly. His identity was exposed by Su Li before. He always felt that every word she said had a hidden meaning. "What do you want to say?" "Follow me and you will know." Su Li turned around and left. Li Hong took a light breath and followed her. The speed of Ma Ying was very fast. When Su Li came to the gate again, Ding Zhang was already out of sight. After a while, the courtyard of Li Qing and others was in sight. Su Li didn't stop, but Li Hong's heartbeat was getting faster and faster. He was afraid that his guess was wrong and that he would face another disappointment. The sound of Su Li opening the door immediately made Li Qing come out of the room. Seeing that there was another person besides Su Li, she didn't look at him but directly came over and said happily, Did you succeed? Su Li glanced at Li Hong, who had become a statue, and nodded with a smile. He is the Martial King of this camp. Great. Martial King University. Li Qing showed a relieved smile. She turned around and was about to greet Li Hong respectfully. But when she saw the latter's face, the latter half of the sentence stopped abruptly. She just stared at Li Hong's face blankly, and her eyes gradually turned red. Although this face was no longer high-spirited and full of vicissitudes, and although a lot of beard covered his face, she still recognized him at a glance. Is it you? I'm not dreaming, right? Li Qing's voice trembled. Li Hong resisted the surge of his heart, hugged Li Qing without saying anything, and buried her in his chest. Only in this way could he feel the reality at this moment. Wu Rong and others came out and saw this scene. They were all at a loss. What's wrong with the captain? She couldn't help but run to Su Li and whispered. Su Li shook her head and said, "Let's leave first and let them talk alone." Wu Rong also felt that it was inappropriate to watch at this moment, so she took Li Dazhuang and Dai Huchuan back to the room. Su Li also returned to her room. With Li Hong's protection, Li Qing could deal with the following things alone. She didn't need to show up. A moment later, Li Hong's face was full of smiles as he tightly held Li Qing's hand. On the way to the leader's study, all the martial artists passing by were surprised to see him. How come he, who usually didn't smile, was smiling like a fool today? Qingling, you have suffered these years. Li Hong's words became much lighter than before when he met his family members. When your teammate Su Li saw me, she should recognize me at a glance. We look very similar. Li Qingling nodded. Thanks to her, otherwise I don't know how long it would take to see you. If I knew you were still alive, I wouldn't have wandered outside for so many years. Maybe we could have reunited earlier. The name Li Qing was naturally a pseudonym. The change was also simple, just removing the word Ling. When she had no relatives in the world, it didn't matter what her name was. But since she met her brother, of course, she would restore her original name. Don't say so much. As long as we can see each other, nothing else matters. Okay. The door of the study of the chief was pushed open. The chubby elder had been waiting here for a long time. Seeing the two come in, he also showed a gratified smile. God will reward those who are willing. Li Hong, now you won't greet people with a sour face all day, right? Li Hong scratched his head and was a little embarrassed. Uncle Ma, thank you for your care these years. Li Qingling also recognized the elder and also called him Uncle Ma. Oh, Uncle Ma, I haven't heard your voice for many years. All right, I don't like that kind of stuff here. The chubby elder waved his hand and turned to look at Li Qingling. Qingling, it's the best that you can come back alive. Don't say anything else. I heard that you met the zombie demon. Li Qingling stopped smiling and said solemnly, Yes. It's in the northeast of my camp, not far. The zombie demon was the size of a palm and looked exactly the same as ordinary small zombie monsters. It was difficult to distinguish. The chubby elder gently nodded, got up, and paced slowly in the room for a moment. Then he asked, Have the martial kings of the two camps arrived? Yes. Li Qingling was surprised. Uncle Ma, you have already received the news. I know a little, but I don't know the specific direction. Qingling, your information is very timely. The chubby elder pondered for a moment before the bead in his hand suddenly stopped spinning. Where did that kid Jean Tian go? Let him make another trip to the Divine Hall and inform Lord Realm Lord. To the Divine Hall. Li Hong's expression suddenly changed. That's too far. Even if Jean Tian has the 1,000 Li Divine Travel Goo, it will take him half a month to go back and forth. Let him go immediately. The chubby elder had a resolute expression. We need to prepare for the worst. Who knows if an accident will happen? Li Hong's heart sank. He immediately said, I know. I will go find him now. Li Qingling blinked her eyes, not understanding what was going on. They were both Thousand City Camp, but Li Camp's history was too short compared to Ma Camp, only a few hundred years. Just now she heard Big Brother say that Ma Camp's history could be traced back to at least 3,000 years ago. That is to say, Uncle Ma was at least 3,000 years old. In Chiamo Domain, he was absolutely an ancient existence. However, in her eyes, There was no difference between Uncle Ma and an ordinary old man. Li Hong was soon busy, and Li Qingling found that she couldn't help him at all. She could only return to her residence first and move in with her brother after the crisis. The door of Su Li's room was closed. She didn't want to disturb her brother, so she summoned Wu Rong and others and told them about her life experience. Everyone was shocked. It turned out that their captain, who had been wandering outside with them for decades, used to be a princess of Thousand City Camp. Wow, your brother is the king of martial arts, and he knows the leader of my camp. We have another big backer. Wu Rong's eyes were shining. Li Dazhuang scratched his head and wondered, what do you mean? He couldn't figure out, but it didn't affect his silly smile. The captain recognized him as her sworn brother, which meant that he suddenly had another sworn brother, the king of martial arts. It was so exciting. The day passed in the joy of reunion. On this day, Ma Camp was still peaceful and happy, without any signs of danger. But Li Qingling always felt that it was the calm before the storm, which was suffocating. The latest chapter of Poisonous Wife, the full text of Poisonous Wife, the download address of Poisonous Wife, the Poisonous Wife on her mobile phone. For the convenience of reading next time, you can click Collection below to record this time, Chapter 643. You can see it next time when you open the bookshelf. If you like Poisonous Wife, please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, WeChat, etc. Thank you for your support. Chapter 644. You can search Poisonous Wife in Baidu. Search for the latest chapter. It was night, and it was as cold as water. Her brother, Li Hong, was still busy and came to find her. As the right-hand man of Uncle Ma, he had too many arrangements to make. She sat on the steps and waited quietly. After a while, Wu Rong opened the door and sat beside Li Qingling. She was not happy like she was in the daytime, but worried and scared. Captain, actually, we haven't gotten rid of the crisis yet, right? Li Qingling sighed and held Wu Rong in her arms. Don't worry. There's so many strong people guarding my camp. We can definitely get through it. Wu Rong nodded and closed her eyes. She was very sad. Although she was usually crazy and heartless, she knew clearly in her heart. Even the martial kings of Ma Camp were small in front of the giant corpse they met in the camp that day. According to the captain, it was not the giant corpse that was really powerful, but the small corpse monster hanging in the mouth of the giant corpse. In silence, she opened her eyes and glanced at the closed door of Su Li's room. Perhaps there was a glimmer of hope only when she recovered from her injury. What? Let me go to the Immortal Hall? Is the old man crazy? Ma Jin-tian was so scared that the steamed bun in his mouth fell to the ground. He swore half a month. Half a month. Maybe when I come back, my house will be stolen. I won't go. Li Hong said helplessly, this is your father's order. You have to go. Ma Jin-tian covered his ears and shrank back to the bed. He said shamelessly, I didn't hear it. Damn it. Ma Camp can't live without me. How can I go? You have to go. The chubby old man walked over with a serious expression. If no one personally notifies the Realm Lord, no one knows if there will be an accident. Don't worry. Even if the corpse spirits attack, this old man can still hold on for half a month. You should leave immediately and return as soon as possible. Ma Jin-tian looked gloomy and said nothing. He knew that the old man was always cautious and had a lot of trump cards. But after all, it was the horrible ghoul that completely destroyed the Qianchang camp in one night. Precisely because the corpse essence is full of variables. If you don't leave this time, the deaths of everyone in Ma Camp will be on your head. The chubby old man emphasized. Ma Jin-tian's heart trembled. He stood up and waved his hand. Get out. I'll go, okay? Smelly old man. You only know how to threaten your own son every day. You don't even know if I'm your biological son. The chubby old man was about to fly into a rage when Li Hong saw this and quickly pulled him out of the room and closed the door. Ma Jin-tian changed his clothes, and his carefree look disappeared instantly. He might lose everything this time, but he had no choice but to go. He touched his ankle and took out a black goo worm, jumping in his hand. Goo immortal traveling insect. Goo immortal traveling insect. Weren't you with Chu Qingming? Why are you with me? So annoying. After 10 minutes, a cyan figure quickly disappeared from the secret exit of the camp, leaving behind a blur that was hard to see, disappearing into the southern horizon. When the chubby elder saw this scene from the top floor, he secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He asked Ma Jin Tian to go out for a reason. If Ma Jin Tian really couldn't hold on, at least Uncle Ma. Suddenly, Li Hong's figure appeared behind him, and his voice was heavy and difficult. The sun is gone. The chubby elder's heart skipped a beat. He hurriedly walked to the window and looked at the dark sky outside. He couldn't hide his seriousness. The corpse essence came. Ma Jin Tian just left, which meant that he had to hold on for half a month to have a chance to survive. He suddenly sped up his words. How about the rune matrix? It was just completed yesterday and hasn't been tested yet. Li Hong looked worried. The chubby elder waved his hand. It's too late. Use it directly. Let the rune masters continue to prepare the next rune matrix. The level can be lowered, but it must be at least level 7. Let all the kings of martial arts come to the war building. I will wait for them there. Understood. Li Hong immediately went to deliver the order. When he walked to the gate, he saw his sister Li Qingling waiting there anxiously. He frowned and said, Why don't you wait at your residence? What are you doing here? The disaster is coming, isn't it? Li Qingling looked a little nervous, but she was very calm. We need to delay time. Is there anything I can do to help? I have learned some runes these years. It's easy for me to set up level 7 rune matrix. Li Hong's eyes suddenly lit up. I will take you to the rune department. Although he didn't know why Li Qingling knew to delay time, his sister's knowledge of runes really helped a lot. There were not many rune masters in the Mayan camp. Besides, many rune masters didn't have time to practice for the level 8 matrix. They were extremely tired. His sister's appearance might give them a moment of respite. After Li Qingling was summoned, only Wu Rong and Li Dazhuang were left in the courtyard. The color of Tianbian is exactly the same as before. Li Dazhuang looked up and stared blankly. He recalled the frightening morning in his mind. There are countless powerhouses in the Qianqing camp. They should be able to resist it, right? Who knows? Dai Huchuan peeled the snacks in his hand and said indifferently, Anyway, we can't help anything with our little strength. We will die if we go there. We are too weak. Wu Rong sighed. At this moment, the door on the left was suddenly pushed open. Suli came out and saw 3 people sitting on the steps. She smiled. I have a request. Are you willing to help me? Wu Rong shivered and immediately stood up. Suli, are you out of practice? How is your injury? Suli shook her head. Almost. I need you to delay time. We? Wu Rong pointed at her nose with great doubts in her eyes. We can also delay time. Suli smiled faintly. Can you do it according to the arrangement I said? Of course. Wu Rong patted her chest with infinite enthusiasm in her eyes. I will go through fire and water without hesitation. Li Dazhuang scratched his head and still didn't quite understand. Dai Huchuan was thoughtful. He had long suspected that it was not a coincidence that the captain and the other 2 could escape from the giant corpse last time. Seeing Wu Rong's reaction, the answer was obvious. Then, come and hold my hand. After Su Li said that, Wu Rong was the first to hold Su Li's outstretched hand. The next moment, she felt that there was an extra voice in her mind. This voice will guide you what to do. Dazhuang, you also come. Oh. Li Dazhuang went forward in a daze. Although he didn't understand, he just had to do as she said. Dai Huchuan also consciously went forward to receive a ghost possession. These ghosts were naturally provided by the first elder of the Ling family. They were low-level ghosts without intelligence. After Su Li transmitted instructions to them, they could be used as carrier runes in disguise. The 3 received a task and soon went out separately. Su Li returned to the room and hurried to make a breakthrough. It took a lot of time to make the ghost restriction. This was the only killing matrix in the restriction of ghosts. It took her a lot of time to carve all the forbidden patterns and distribute them to the 3 ghosts. This ghost restriction was called Red Lotus of Purgatory. Although it was not as good as the trump card used by Qing Shui Nun in the Xian house, it was not much worse. Moreover, it didn't cost anyone's life. At most, The rune matrix could not bear the burden and would be destroyed. Wu Rong walked on the edge of the mountain city and carefully inserted the forbidden patterns into the ground according to the instructions of the voice in her mind. She found that others seemed to be unable to see the flickering of the forbidden patterns. At most, they would think that her behavior was a little strange, which made her relax a little. As she walked, she came to the city gate. At this moment, the city gate was full of warriors. They surrounded the city gate tightly. She managed to squeeze to the designated place to bury the forbidden patterns. When she straightened up and looked up, she found that the sky was covered with dark clouds. It was so dark that it seemed that she could reach it with her hands. Everyone looked serious. The oppressive atmosphere made Wu Rong a little breathless. There's one last place. Wu Rong was squeezed by the warriors. She was cursed in a low voice. She apologized again and again. Finally, she came to the last place. Unexpectedly, she was under the nose of a martial king in red. She swallowed her saliva and braced herself to move forward. She pretended to ask, "Lord, hear what happened?" As she asked, she didn't forget to bury the last piece of forbidden pattern in the ground. Although the martial king in red heard the voice, he did not see it. His burning eyes stared at the dark clouds. He said coldly, "Mine is in great danger. This place is dangerous. It is not a place for a rank 6 warrior like you. You can either retreat to that group of warriors as a backup or go to the logistics department to help." Although his voice was cold, Wu Rong felt warm in her heart. Coincidentally, she saw that the forbidden pattern had completely merged into the ground. She nodded and was about to turn around and leave. Suddenly, boom, the earth shook and the mountains shook. The ordinary people who were still sleeping in the morning were immediately awakened by this loud bang. The entire Ma'ing fell into chaos in the blink of an eye. Wu Rong's body became unstable and she almost fell. However, she did not care about herself. She quickly looked at the place where she had planted the forbidden pattern. Only when she found that it had not been shaken out did she feel a little relieved. With her vision, she naturally could not understand that the place where she had planted the forbidden pattern was not a real thing. The martial king in red had already jumped onto the city wall to watch. Naturally, he did not see her abnormal behavior. Wu Rong immediately rushed into the group of warriors and went back to report to Su Li. There were more than 20 people on the city wall. Seeing the martial king in red coming up, the others looked at him and nodded to greet him. The martial king in red walked to the slightly fat old man standing on the city wall tower. He slightly lowered his head and asked, "Leader Ma, how is the situation?" "Not bad." The slightly fat old man stared at the outline of the giant corpse that was slowly appearing in the distance. There are only signs of one giant corpse. Compared with Li Ying, there are 2 less. At this moment, there are 20 martial kings guarding the camp, including you, which is 12 more than Li Ying. Even if we can't kill the giant corpse, we can restrain it. The rune matrix of the 8th level has been completed. You are free to form teams and take turns to restrain the giant corpse. Leave enough time to rest and maintain your strength. Hearing this, the martial king in red could not help but show admiration. "Leader Ma, you are really thoughtful. Why don't you form a group of 5? We are the foreign martial kings who came to help, so there are 5 of us." As soon as the martial king in red finished speaking, he saw a tall and thin warrior dressed like a scout rushing over and shouting, "Leader, we found another giant corpse. The second one." The latest chapter of The Poisonous Wife, the full text of The Poisonous Wife, the download of The Poisonous Wife, The Poisonous Wife. For the convenience of reading next time, you can click collect below to record this time, chapter 644. Next time you open the bookshelf, you can see it. If you like The Poisonous Wife, please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, WeChat, etc. Thank you for your support. Chapter 645. You can search for Poison Wife on Baidu. Search for the latest chapter. The pupils of the slightly plump old man shrank. He quickly snatched the report from the scout's hands. After taking a closer look, He turned his head to look at the red-clothed martial king and said solemnly, "It looks like your rest time will be halved." "It's fine." The red-clothed martial king did not dare to delay any longer. "I'll make the arrangements now." The slightly plump old man nodded. His eyes flashed with deep worry. Even though he had experienced countless trials and tribulations in the past 3,000 years, this was the first time he was facing a corpse spirit. Could he really protect Maing? No matter what the people of this era did, they were very fast. In less than half a cup of tea's time, 10 martial kings split into 2 teams. They turned into streams of light and flew in the direction of the 2 giant corpses. Their mission was to slow down the giant corpses' progress towards Maing. It would be best if they could repel them. Among the first batch of martial kings, the red-clothed martial king was among them. Furthermore, he was the captain of the first team. The other 4 martial kings were personally trained by him, so they naturally had a tacit understanding of each other. When we come into contact with the giant corpses later, I'll take the lead and test it out. You guys go to the side and see if there are any dangers around. The red-clothed martial king transmitted his voice. The 4 of them nodded in unison, calm and cautious. Soon, the 5 of them rushed into the black mist. The huge silhouette of the giant corpse appeared in front of them. The red-clothed martial king narrowed his eyes, and a blood-colored spear appeared in his hand. He immediately accelerated and turned into a sanguine light that accurately pierced the black mark on the giant corpse's chest. The red-clothed martial king was not Wurong. His speed was extremely fast. The clumsy giant corpse was naturally unable to block it. The sanguine light instantly pierced the black mark. Good. When the 4 martial kings saw this scene, they were pleasantly surprised. Only the red-clothed martial king, who was alone in the sanguine light, had a sudden change in expression. Without saying a word, he retreated to the side of the 4. The hand that held the spear opened up and was covered in blood. The pupils of the 4 of them shrank. They knew how powerful their captain was, but he was actually injured in the first strike. It's different. The red-clothed martial king looked at the clumsy, giant corpse in the distance and saw the white dot on the black mark. His tone became complicated. The giant corpse that appeared is different from Li Ying's. It's too hard. I suspect that the black mark is not a death spot at all. At this point, the red-clothed martial king's tone sank. It will be much more difficult to restrain it than we imagined. Let's send the news first. The news quickly reached the slightly fat old man's ears. Did the weakness change? The chubby old man pondered for a moment. It's fine. Since there are only giant corpses and no corpse spirits, we still have time. While the martial kings were restraining them, they might as well try to find new weaknesses in these giant corpses. Xiao Hong, Li and Marshall, Li said. Li Hong stepped forward and nodded, revealing a trace of smile. Fortunately, although there was no test, the level 8 runic array was successfully activated. The level 7 runic array is also being prepared quickly. With the addition of Qingling, the efficiency has increased significantly. Very good. Qingling is also a good child. Go and coordinate the rotation of martial kings. Do not make any mistakes. I understand. Li Hong turned around and descended the city wall. Seeing him leave, the middle-aged martial king standing on the other side of the chubby old man could not help but snort coldly. Humph! Coward! Leader, forgive me for being blunt, but you are too partial to him. We have 11 martial kings in my camp. Why can't he go to the battlefield? As soon as he said this, the other 10 martial kings waiting on the wall had a change in their expressions. The slightly fat old man chuckled. His eyes were as sharp as a knife. He said slowly, I have always been fair. Li Hong has his reasons for not fighting. All of you do not have to feel that it is unfair. As for Ding Gang, if you are unhappy because of your younger brother's punishment, you can explain it to this old man. If you're trying to sow discord because of your selfish motives, do you know what you are doing? Ding Gang's expression changed slightly. He was indeed unhappy because of his brother, Ding Zhang. He did not think about the consequences. The others also calmed down. Since Ding Gang had his reasons, they chose to believe in their leader. At this moment, Wu Rong ran all the way back to the courtyard. She saw Dai Huchuan and Li Dazhuang waiting in front of the steps. She was the last one to return. "Have you all arranged it?" she asked. Dai Huchuan and Li Dazhuang both nodded. "I heard a loud noise just now. Has the battle started in front of the city gate?" Dai Huchuan looked worried. Wu Rong forced a smile. "It doesn't matter. I saw many martial kings on the wall. I only saw dark clouds and didn't see the shadow of the giant corpse." "That's good." Dai Huchuan nodded and turned to look at Su Li's house. "I don't know how long it will take for her to come out." Wu Rong frowned and said firmly, "The captain was called to help. We can't just wait." "Dazhuang, He Chun, let's take turns to inquire about the news from now on. We must make sure that we can know the movement in the front line as soon as possible." "Okay." Li Dazhuang smiled. "We can still do such a simple thing." At the same time, outside the big tactical matrix of Qimo Circle in Jiuzhou region of Qingshui Circle, Ling Li held his sword and stood aside. Suddenly, a golden flowing light appeared from the nothingness and turned into a carrier rune. Hua Yan's anxious and uneasy voice came from it. "Fellow practitioner Ling, Bai Mo comes again. Please." He suddenly opened his eyes. As the golden light flowed, his scattered black hair fluttered without wind. A dragon-shaped phantom appeared behind him. The noble and indifferent dragon eyes looked down at the big tactical matrix, as if it was an ant. "Open!" Ling Li shouted coldly, and the golden dragon's shadow blasted out with his right fist. The dragon's shadow roared to the sky, and the golden energy poured out. Boom! In an instant, the world shook. The white tactical matrix was contaminated by the golden color. A little crack appeared from the center, and then the cracks spread out quickly like a spider web. Ling Li saw it and punched again without saying a word. Clatter! The seal collapsed in an instant, and a human-sized hole appeared in front of him. At this moment, Qitian, who was far away in the immortal hall of Qimo Circle, suddenly opened his eyes and disappeared from the throne in the blink of an eye. Ling Li suddenly felt a suffocating pressure coming to his face. Before he could avoid it, a tall, red-haired man appeared in front of him and looked at him with a serious expression. "Did you break the seal? Why did you call me here?" Ling Li had seen Qitian from a distance, so he naturally knew his identity. He nodded quickly and said, "I'm Ling Li. I'm invited by Lord Hua of Ni sect to help. I didn't expect that there was someone who could break the seal in this world except the Grand Elder Su." Qitian nodded and smiled casually. "What's the matter with the Grand Elder Su?" Ling Li looked slightly serious, and Qitian immediately stopped smiling. He said in a deep voice, "What happened?" After a while, in the main hall of Ni sect, when Hua Yan saw Qitian come in, she finally felt relieved and thanked Ling Li repeatedly. Fortunately, she believed him once, otherwise Ni sect would be in danger this time. "Lord Qitian, thank you." Hua Yan looked ashamed. "Our Grand Elder is still missing. I just received the news that there is a new movement in the Fate Palace. If Bai Mo comes in person, we can't resist him at all. Only you can take charge." Qitian shook his head and said in a relaxed tone, "I have heard about the Grand Elder Su from Ling Li. Lord Hua doesn't need to worry too much. Since I show up, Bai Mo can't take advantage of it." "Thank you, Lord Qitian," Hua Yan said gratefully. Then she changed the topic and talked about the battle in Xian House. In fact, the Grand Elder made a contribution last time. In just half a month, Tynyak Attic sent the news that the 50 Grand Elders of holy sects controlled by the Fate Palace had all died. The sects were in chaos and could not pose a threat to our sect, and the remaining 30 holy sects were all declared to belong to our Ni sect. As soon as these words came out, even Qitian was stunned. 50 Grand Elders of holy sects. That was 50 junior emperors, not cabbages. How on earth did Su Li kill 50 junior emperors together in that battle? Moreover, it was extremely abnormal that the remaining 30 holy sects changed sides together. Su Li must have played a role in it. Otherwise, why didn't Bai Mo detonate the poisonous life insect and let those junior emperors change sides? Qitian sighed deeply, and his eyes were complicated. What on earth did the little girl do? In terms of destructive power, his ability seemed to be far inferior to hers. In addition, Chi finally saw a glimmer of hope that Bimo would be defeated and he could save the creatures of Chimo's circle. Compared with Qin Shui's circle, Chimo's circle was too small. Even if all the people of Chimo's circle were accepted, it would not have any impact. And because of the decline of Chimo's circle, the warrior's lifespan was not long. Except for him, no one lived more than 10,000 years. That was to say, except for him, no one had the mark of the natural law and would not be rejected by this circle. This was the best solution. I hope I can succeed before the destruction of Chimo's circle. Thinking of this, Chi looked up and said to Huayan, "During this time, I will stay at the entrance of the seal with Ling Li to protect and dissect. The pressure of expulsion is much less there, but the restriction of a natural law still exists. I can only stay for a month at most, and then I have to go back to rest for a while." "That's enough. Thank you for coming here." Huayan was slightly relieved, and her eyes flashed. "Although the Grand Elder is not here, our NI sect is not powerless at the moment. If the Fate Palace attacks, I can deal with other enemies, except Bimo." "Ha ha! You're the best friend of Grand Elder Su. I naturally believe you." Chi laughed heartily, and his figure disappeared in the hall. Ling Li nodded to Huayan and was about to leave, but Huayan stopped him. "Wait. Fang Yuan also went back to Tina's sect these days. Why don't you go to see him?" Ling Li's body suddenly shook, and finally left the hall silently without saying anything. This father and son are really... Huayan shook her head and smiled bitterly. She didn't know when this knot could be untied. Ling Li went out of the hall. After thinking for a while, he finally came to the house where Su Buwang lived. He stood outside the house and stretched out his hand to knock on the door, but he couldn't do it. After a long time, he slightly pursed his lips and sighed in his heart. He turned around and was about to leave, but he saw Su Buwang behind him, holding a basket of wine and looking at him coldly. "Why are you here?" Su Buwang turned his head and glanced at him. He snorted coldly and walked directly past him with the wine. "You are not welcome here, you know." The latest chapter of The Poisonous Wife, the full text of The Poisonous Wife, the download of The Poisonous Wife. The Poisonous Wife was reading on the mobile phone. For the convenience of reading next time, you can click Collection below to record this time, Chapter 645. Next time you open the bookshelf, you can see it. If you like The Poisonous Wife, please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, WeChat, etc. Thank you for your support. Chapter 646. You can search Poisonous Wife in Baidu. Search for the latest chapter. Hearing Su Buwang's cold words, Ling Li felt bitter in his heart, but he didn't show it. He just nodded and said, "I'll go now." He turned around, but he heard a sound of something breaking through the air behind him. He thought for a while and didn't hide. Crash! The wine bottle burst directly from the top of his head, and the pieces were scattered on the ground. The wine was poured all over Ling Li, and the smell of alcohol was overwhelming. "Don't think that I will forgive you if you leave Shengtian Shrine and chase me here." Su Buwang panted heavily and blushed. He shouted hysterically, "Any difficulties you have nothing to do with me. Don't come here in the future. Disgusting. Get out." Every word of Su Buwang was like a knife, stabbing into Ling Li's heart. Ling Li gently covered his chest and smiled bitterly with a pale face. His mouth was really vicious. He was really like his mother at this point. Sighing softly, Ling Li didn't look at Su Buwang again and left silently, until his figure completely disappeared in front of the courtyard. The fierce look on Su Buwang's face disappeared instantly, and he was full of loss. He sat on the ground with the wine basket in his arms and looked at the wine stain on the ground in front of him. He didn't know what to feel. It was Su Buwang's fault. He drove him away, but why did he feel empty in his heart? Su Buwang roared angrily. He opened the wine bottle and drank it. He didn't want to think about anything, and he was even more unwilling to forgive him. Ling Li returned to the sealed entrance of Chimo's circle. Chi was surprised to see that he was full of alcohol, but he didn't ask much and continued to close his eyes to rest. 4 days later, In the central hall of Chimo's circle, Ma Jin-tian looked pale and breathless at the towering hall tower in front of him. It almost took him to cross half of Chimo's circle from Ma Ying to the hall. It should have taken him 7 days, but it only took him 4 days. Obviously, it cost a lot. After recovering some strength, Ma Jin-tian took out the token of Ma Ying and threw it into the groove of the hall. The next moment, the gate of the hall opened, and he immediately flashed in. What? Milord Realm went to seal the exit. When Ma Jin-tian heard this, his face became paler. He had no energy to go to other places. The person who received Ma Jin-tian was a young man in a blue martial artist suit. He was surrounded by frost and looked gentle. Looks like you used some extreme methods to get here as soon as possible. That's why you've lost a lot of your blood chi. After the youth said that, he took out a blood essence from his universe ring and handed it over. Eat it, Lord Bing Feng. This, Ma Jin-tian looked at the blood essence in the young man's hand. It was a holy thing for replenishing chi and blood. Only martial emperors were qualified to use it. It was a strategic material. Just eat when I tell you to. Bing Feng's smile was very warm. It's a special time now. It doesn't matter who uses it. My speed is not as fast as yours. You should hurry up and recover, then bring me back to camp first. As for the Realm Lord, I have his divine sense. As long as he returns, I can immediately send a message to him. No need to worry. Hearing this, Ma Jin-tian's doubts disappeared. He took the blood essence and absorbed it without saying anything. At this moment, Ma Jin-tian had held on for 6 days under the attack of the zombies. The city wall was still towering, but the level 8 rune matrix had been damaged to a considerable extent. On the city wall, a group of 20 martial kings were taking the time to recover. They relied on the rune matrix to resist the 2 giant corpses in front of them. The rune matrix can't hold on for a long time. The martial king in red opened his eyes. His eyes were full of heavy exhaustion. So were the other martial kings. The plan couldn't keep up with the changes. The giant corpses were more difficult to deal with than everyone imagined. Ordinary martial kings couldn't have the strength and hardness. In order to slow down the giant corpses, they had to fight together. Therefore, they lost the time to rest. The 20 people held on for 3 days and 3 nights. Finally, they couldn't hold on anymore and returned to the city wall. Without the martial king's entanglement, the giant corpses' progress was naturally faster. Soon, they were dozens of feet away from the city wall. They didn't stop until they touched the level 8 rune matrix. The level 8 rune matrix didn't let them down. It had held on for 1 day and 1 night. Obviously, it was wishful thinking to rely on it to hold on until Ma Jin-tian came back. Li Hong took a deep breath and took a step forward. His eyes were clear. Uncle Ma, let me go. The chubby old man felt pity, but he didn't stop him this time. He turned to Ding Gang and others. Have you had a good rest? I need a team to cooperate with you. Ding Gang looked at Li Hong in astonishment and then looked at the chubby old man. The coward actually took the initiative to come forward. Seeing that Ding Gang didn't speak for a long time, the chubby old man frowned slightly. But at this time, the martial king in red stood up and said in a deep voice, Leader Ma, do you need help? I can take action after I recover some strength. The chubby old man nodded and said solemnly, Originally, I wanted to see if we could find a chance to deal with the 2 giant corpses by ourselves. But since the weakness has disappeared, we can't find a new weakness. Li Hong will deal with 1 giant corpse alone. The other one will be divided into 3 groups. In this way, you can make time to rest. What? Li Hong will deal with 1 giant corpse alone? Ding Gang cried out in horror. How is this possible? That is a giant corpse. Li Hong turned around. His gaze was like a blade, extremely dazzling. Ding Gang's body suddenly trembled, and he instantly lost his voice. At this moment, he finally felt the former strength. At this time, the senior martial king beside him sighed and privately transmitted his voice. Ding Gang, you came late and don't know. When Li Hong was young, he was the strongest in our Ma camp, and now it has been 10 years. Li Hong, so you're the Ma camp's Saber King. The eyes of the martial king in red flashed, and he laughed heartily. No wonder. I have been wondering why the strongest expert of my camp hasn't appeared yet. Good. Today, I have the honor to fight side by side with the Saber King. Li Hong didn't say much. He gently nodded and pointed to the giant corpse on the left. I'll leave this one to you. Try not to let it continue to destroy the rune array, and try not to get injured. Do what you can. All right. The 20 people were quickly redistributed. 2 teams of 7 people and 1 team of 6 people. Li Hong stared at the giant corpse, his eyes filled with killing intent. A long, snow-white saber appeared in his hand. Let's go. Boom. After a day and a night, the loud sound began to reverberate in the ears of the residents of my camp. Ordinary people couldn't do anything but walk to the gate and put their hands together to pray for the warriors. In a rune camp, Li Qingling's right hand holding the rune pin trembled slightly. Her forehead was sweating and her face was pale. She hadn't rested for 4 days, but she still didn't want to stop. She didn't dare to stop. Every extra moment to carve runes meant a little more chance of survival. Some of the other rune masters in the rune camp had not rested for nearly a month and directly fainted from exhaustion. Wu Rong, Li Dazhuang, and Dai Huchuan constantly shuttled back and forth in the city to ensure that Su Li could get the latest news when she woke up. At this moment, they were fighting for survival. Crack! The long saber scratched the back of the giant corpse, just like a blunt knife cutting the rotten leather. It made a harsh and unpleasant sound. Li Hong's eyes didn't change. He gently stepped on the shoulders of the giant corpse and turned over flexibly to the front of the giant corpse. He held his breath and waited. On the city wall, many inexperienced warriors were all shocked. Master Li really stopped a giant corpse by himself. Too strong. Although Lord Li is usually serious, I have never seen him fight. I really can't see it at all. Great. We can still hold on. Ding Gang leaned against the bricks of the city wall and looked at Li Hong's back. With a complicated expression, he took a deep breath and cursed in a low voice. Bastard, you lied to me again. When we go back this time, I will throw you into the scout camp. Hearing this, many kings of martial arts smiled and relaxed for a while. Ding Gang's younger brother, Ding Zhang, was not a secret. Morale rose a lot because of Li Hong's appearance. But warriors fought with their own pneuma and blood, not with the help of heaven and earth. In a normal battle, warriors were brave. If a practitioner of the same level was close to them, he might be defeated in an instant. This was also the reason why the Chimo Circle and the Qingshui Circle could win the war when they were outnumbered. But if a monster like the giant corpse was delayed, the shortcomings of warriors would immediately show. Their means were too simple. Their endurance was too poor. After consuming too much pneuma and blood, it would take a long time to replenish it. So, just 3 days later, above the city wall, 20 kings of martial arts were lying on the ground. They were all exhausted and couldn't fight anymore. Li Hong's face was slightly pale. He stood on the top of the city wall and pressed his lips tightly. He looked at the giant corpse who was using his giant arms to destroy the rune matrix without rest. He still had the strength to fight. But if he fought with 2 giant corpses alone, it was very likely that he couldn't come back. So, it was useless to delay the battle. Uncle Ma. He took a deep breath and walked to the chubby elder. He whispered, "The rune matrix can hold on for half a day at most." The chubby elder nodded and still looked calm. Today is the 5th day. Li Hong was in a dilemma. Only he could understand Uncle Ma's words. It would take half a month for Ma Jintian to ask for help. Only 5 days had passed out of the 15 days. They still had to hold on for 10 days. The chubby elder turned his hand and took out a palm-sized stove. He looked hesitant for the first time. This thing could help the camp to hold on for 5 days. But how could they make up for the gap of 5 days? Li Hong's eyes changed slightly when he saw the stove in the elder's hand. Uncle Ma's cultivation was not high. When he was in danger that year, Uncle Ma relied on this thing to save him from the corpses. He couldn't understand the words on this thing. It must be an ancient treasure, but Uncle Ma didn't dare to use it now. It meant even such a treasure might not be able to resist the giant corpses for a long time. Half a day seemed long, but it was extremely short under the attack of the giant corpses. More and more cracks appeared on the rune matrix. The rune matrix was about to be broken. The warriors who watched in the city gradually became desperate. The chubby elder sighed. No matter what, he had to save the camp first. He flipped his palms and made a strange gesture. If Suli were here, she would definitely see that the gesture was somewhat similar to the treasure Milky Way. But before the gesture was finished, the two giant corpses suddenly raised their heads and roared. Four fists bombarded the place where the rune matrix was broken. Everyone's expression suddenly changed. Boom! The latest chapter of The Poisonous Wife. The full text of The Poisonous Wife. The download of The Poisonous Wife. The Poisonous Wife. For the convenience of reading next time, you can click collect below to record this time. Chapter 646. You can read it next time when you open the bookshelf. If you like The Poisonous Wife, please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, WeChat, etc. Thank you for your support. Chapter 647. You can search for Poisonous Wife in Baidu. Search for the latest chapter. This time, the deafening rumble was fiercer than any other time. The entire mountain city was affected. Under the recoil, the ground trembled violently. Fine cracks spread out from the mountain, and the pots and pans in the houses of the commoners were scattered all over the ground. The rune matrix was broken. Ma Ying had no means to protect himself. Panic was boiling. Roar! Ha ha! On the city wall, the iconic strange cry made Li Hong's pupils shrink. He stared at the giant mouth of the giant corpse on the left. Sure enough, a small corpse monster the size of a palm appeared in front of everyone. It arrogantly showed its sharp teeth, which was ghastly and horrible. The corpse monster, Li Hong's killing intent sword. He was about to rush out of the city wall, but the corpse monster suddenly disappeared in front of him. It turned into a shadow and rushed to the chubby elder. Oh no, its target is the leader. The face of the martial king in red changed dramatically, but his tired body couldn't keep up. Li Hong couldn't turn back to rescue the leader. Uncle Ma, retreat. At the moment of life and death, the chubby elder was tense. He didn't retreat at all. He made gestures faster, but he was still a little slower than the speed of the corpse monster. At this moment, the news finally spread to the courtyard from the mouth of Wu Rong and the other two. Bad news. Su Li, the rune matrix is broken. In the room, Su Li suddenly opened her closed eyes and temporarily suppressed the intention of breakthrough in her eyes. She pressed her hands on the ghost matrix pattern that had been prepared on the ground. Her eyes were shining, and she said calmly, "Open for me." Buzz! The black rune appeared and broke through the void in the blink of an eye. All the forbidden patterns that had been buried before were instantly activated and turned into a big black net. On the city wall, the moment when the corpse monster was about to scratch the forehead of the chubby elder, the black rune barrier appeared behind the chubby elder without warning. It expanded in an instant and directly knocked the corpse monster away. Squeak! The corpse spirit screamed in exasperation as it scuttled back into the black mist, disappearing without a trace. The chubby elder made gestures in his hands, but he didn't intend to continue. He stared at the big black matrix that suddenly appeared above his head and didn't come to his senses for a long time. Not only him, but the entire city wall fell into a deathly silence. It seemed like a long time had passed since the corpse spirit had suffered a fatal blow, but in reality, it had only been an instant. Before anyone could react, it had already been over. The chubby old man put away the furnace and pointed at the black curtain above his head to Li Hong. He asked doubtfully, "Which rune master arranged this?" Li Hong shook his head in a daze. The rune camp being able to draw an 8th level array is already the limit. Such an array. Li Hong stared at the black runes on the light curtain. He reached out and touched it. It was cold to the touch. He scratched his head and asked in confusion, "Uncle Ma, can I touch the rune array?" The chubby old man's pupils shrank. He reached out his hand and touched the rippling barrier in front of him. He immediately fell into silence. What happened? The martial kings looked at each other in dismay. The scene just now was too thrilling. Now that everyone had come back to their senses, they felt like they had been on a roller coaster. Their hearts surged with emotions, fluctuating up and down. It doesn't seem like it. The leader of the Ma camp seems to be confused as well. Don't worry about it. Since the corpse spirit suffered a setback for the time being, let's hurry up and recover. The Martial King in red leaned against the city wall and sat down, closing his eyes. Go and have a rest. If it is really the thing I guessed, you don't have to worry too much for the time being. The chubby old man suddenly said with a smile. It seems that there is a hidden expert in our camp. Li Hong was confused. What did Uncle Ma see? Could such a thin layer of black curtain really resist the attack of the giant corpse? He was deeply doubtful, but after many years of getting along, he chose to believe in the chief for once. The alert of the city gate has been lowered. Wu Rong heard the news that Dai Huchuan had just sent back. She couldn't help but look up at the sky blankly and murmured, "Was the black thing covering the camp really arranged by the three of us?" Dai Huchuan also looked up at the sky and muttered, "Although I don't believe it, but the fact is in front of us." Suli took out a matrix casually and asked the three of them to arrange it. It was even more powerful than the 8th level array arranged by a group of rune masters in the rune camp. It directly lowered the alert of the city gate. Suli, how powerful was she? Dai Huchuan couldn't help but think of the scene when he rescued Su Li from the Black Stone, and his scalp was numb. It seemed that he really saved a great person. "You guys, what are you doing?" At this time, Li Qingling pushed the door with a tired face. "Captain, you're back." Wu Rong's eyes brightened and immediately ran over. Li Qingling smiled and nodded. "I have done everything I can. The masters in the rune camp are all tired and fainted. I can't change the situation by myself. So, eldest brother asked me to come back first. Well, then you go and have a rest." Wu Rong looked at Li Qingling's eyes, which were as red as a rabbit's, and couldn't help but feel distressed. The rune matrix was really exhausting. They didn't sleep for 5 days and 5 nights, but they were still energetic, but the captain was so tired. Li Qingling responded and was about to go to sleep. A figure appeared in front of the courtyard door. It was Li Hong, eldest brother. Li Qingling's eyes brightened and immediately ran over. "Qingling, you are tired." Seeing Li Qingling, the seriousness on Li Hong's face immediately melted, leaving only the mellow and gentleness of an elder brother. "Go and have a rest." Has the city gate been stabilized? Li Qingling saw the exhaustion and doubt in his eldest brother's eyes and couldn't help but ask with concern. Uncle Ma said it was temporarily stabilized, but maybe only he knows when it will be unstable. Li Hong was helpless. He had just confirmed that this powerful protective black screen was indeed not arranged by any of them. The result could only be as what Uncle Ma said. There was a hidden strong person in my camp, but he didn't know why that person was not willing to show up until now. "Where is your teammate named Su Li? Why didn't I see her?" Li Hong stopped thinking and said seriously, "I came here specially to thank her. Without her, we may not be able to recognize each other under the crisis of the city." "What you said makes sense, but Su Li has been practicing in isolation for several days. Even I can't see her." Li Qingling explained and pointed to the closed door. "I see. That's a pity," Li Hong said regretfully. He was not sure about the survival of Ma camp this time. Maybe it was very likely that he would never have a chance to thank Su Li this time. He turned back and touched Li Qingling's soft hair. His eyes were full of tenderness and concern. "Take good care of yourself. I'm going to work." "Yes. Don't worry, eldest brother." Li Qingling didn't say much and quietly watched her brother leave. She knew very well that her eldest brother Li Hong didn't have much confidence in the victory of the attack of the zombies. Ma camp persisted for 6 days without the arrival of the Lord of the Realm. There must be something wrong. "Captain, let's go inside and talk." Wu Rong closed the courtyard door and exchanged a look with Li Dazhuang and Li Qingling. Then they pushed Li Qingling, who was puzzled, into the room. After a moment, "What? This black curtain was set up by you?" Li Qingling was stunned. Wu Rong scratched her head embarrassedly and said with a red face, "Not really. Su Li asked us to go there." "Yes. It took me several hours to set it up," Li Dazhuang said proudly with a red face. Li Qingling suddenly felt funny. Now, all the warriors in Ma camp were discussing who the strong person behind the black screen was. She originally guessed that it was Su Li, but when she thought that Su Li was practicing in isolation, she didn't think much. Whoever thought that it was the three reckless muggles who completed the feat of saving the first camp? The most incredible thing was that Wu Rong and the other two didn't know the tactical matrix at all. How on earth did Su Li let them arrange the tactical matrix in Ma camp accurately? For this point, Wu Rong and the other two explained more mysteriously. Li Qingling was confused and finally could only helplessly smile. She turned her head to look at the closed door and whispered to herself in her heart, "Be sure to catch up. Be sure to catch up." Ma Jintian's hair stood erect. He raised his head and roared. He swallowed the remaining half of the blood essence in his mouth. Suddenly, there was smoke under his feet. Like a wild horse, he left a long trace of grass and trees. There was a specially made long whip tied around his waist, and the other end of the whip was suspended in midair. Bing Feng, a young man in a blue warrior suit, changed the ice shield in front of him into the shape with the least wind pressure. He looked helpless and curious. Under such wind pressure, even he had to light up the ice shield, otherwise it would damage his image. The poisonous insect traveling for 1,000 miles is really worthy of its reputation. This speed is 50% faster than my flying speed. Bing Feng sighed and looked at the young man running on the ground. Maybe in the whole Chimo circle, only the Lord of Realm could be faster than him. Reincarnation Mirror was really a magical place. On the city wall, the chubby elder sat in the center of the city gate and was shocked to see the gray skin of the two giant corpses gradually eroded by the black color because of frequent attacks on the tactical matrix. This was not a simple tactical matrix of Qing Shui Circle, but a long-lost tactical matrix of Qing Shui Circle. Only the tactical matrix of Qing Shui Circle could turn invisible into tangible, maintain a strong protection ability, and have such a strange attack ability. Even the giant corpses were injured under the recoil. It should be known that the 21 martial kings worked hard for 5 days and 5 nights, but only left a trace on the giant corpses. But the mysterious man did it without any effort. Which old monster of Qing Shui Circle is hiding in Chimo Circle? Does the Lord of Realm know about it? The chubby elder had a lot of thoughts, but he was less worried. Anyway, the mysterious man could take action, and this tactical matrix was so powerful that the giant corpses couldn't do anything to it. It was much easier for Ma Ying to hold on until the rescue of the Immortal Hall. He didn't even need to use the only magic treasure in his hand. Thud! 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 Suddenly, the sound of flurried footsteps came from behind. The chubby elder frowned slightly and turned his head. What he saw immediately made his heart skip a beat. The latest chapter of The Poisonous Wife, the full text of The Poisonous Wife, the download of The Poisonous Wife, The Poisonous Wife. For the convenience of reading next time, you can click Collect below to record this time, Chapter 647. You can read it next time when you open the bookshelf. If you like The Poisonous Wife, please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, WeChat, etc. Thank you for your support. Chapter 648. You can search for Poisonous Wife on Baidu. You can search for the latest chapter. Drip, drip. The scout's face was covered in blood as he stared at the chubby elder with a dull look in his eyes. His voice, which was usually firm and resolute, was choked with sobs. "It's over, leader. It's over." "What's going on?" The chubby old man stood up and shouted. "Wake up. Calm down. What did you see?" Perhaps it was the chubby old man's calm face that comforted the scout's heart. He gradually calmed down and said with grief and indignation, "We found a large number of giant corpses in the black fog. The number is no less than 20, maybe even more. In order to find out the exact number of giant corpses, all the martial artists of the scout camp died in battle. I am the only one left to report." As soon as these words came out, the entire place fell into a deathly silence. It was like a bolt from the blue, bombarding the chubby old man's heart. 20 giant corpses. He gasped and held the city wall with one hand. He suddenly turned his head and stared into the depths of the black fog. It was as if he could hear the familiar and arrogant cries of the corpse spirits in the black fog. One corpse spirit could actually command 20 giant corpses to fight. This number had far exceeded the giant corpses that Li Ying had encountered in the past. It was also far beyond the limit of what they could handle. How could this be? The red-clothed Martial King's body was cold. His blood was frozen by the sudden bad news. How could there be intact eggs when the nest was overturned? If even the strong camp was destroyed by the corpse spirits, then their camp would be next. Ding Zhang's smile was uglier than crying. 20, one for each of us? Are you joking? Leader. Li Hong quickly received the news and rushed over. His face was gloomy. Is the scout's news true? The chubby old man looked at the churning black fog outside the city wall and sighed. Announce it to the whole city. This is a disaster that we can't stop. They should have the right to know. Li Hong trembled and clenched his fists. His eyes were red as he gritted his teeth and said, Uncle Ma, are you giving up? The slightly plump old man was silent. The dark green jade furnace flew out from his sleeve again and gradually rose higher. As it faced the wind, it turned into the shadow of a large bowl that covered the entire camp. The red-robed old man looked up at the jade green and black light screen and could not help but be speechless. Even if 20 giant corpses attacked at the same time, it would still take them a long time to break through the defense, right? The chubby old man turned around and looked at Li Hong and the other martial kings. His voice was old and firm. Giving up is impossible, but who can guarantee that we can really persevere until the Realm Lord arrives? The reason I told them this is so that they can be mentally prepared. This cauldron is a remnant of a supreme treasure. Even though I don't have the power to control it, it's still tough enough. You guys should hurry up and recover your blood and chi. Don't give up. Don't give up on any chance. All the martial kings stood up and bowed their heads to the slightly hunched old man. Understood. In the courtyard, in the dim room, Suli slowly opened her eyes, and there was a strong feeling in her eyes. When she looked up, her sight seemed to pass through the roof and see the shadow of the cyan furnace outside. A trace of the Milky Way's aura. Could it be the treasure of the Milky Way sect that was shattered? Confusion flashed in Suli's eyes. The treasure of Tina's sect actually fell into the Chimo circle. However, fortunately, mine took it out. Otherwise, my breakthrough would not be smooth. At this moment, she finally understood the true meaning of Suiyu tactics. Suiyu. What was needed to practice this method was not the Nimbus, but a special energy called Jade Chi, which was completely different from the Nimbus. If the entire cultivation world was built on spiritual aura, then she had every reason to imagine that there was a place under the starry sky that used Jade Aura as the foundation for cultivation. Suiyu tactics was a practice method of another world, and its power was beyond doubt. Su Li, who had seen through its essence, could directly reach the mastery in a short time as long as she had enough Jade Chi, not to mention breaking through the third hurdle. The practice method was no longer difficult for her. The Chimo circle is full of death. Black lotus stones are everywhere. There is no vitality, and there is no jade stone. Although the difficulty of practicing Suiyu tactics has been reduced, even the cleverest housewife can't cook without rice. Fortunately, Su Li looked at the touch of green in the sky, and a smile finally appeared in her dark and deep eyes. It's just the right time. The camp was shrouded in dark green. No one noticed that the dark green in the sky above Li Qingling's courtyard was a little bit more than the other places. The news that 20 giant corpses attacked the city quickly spread throughout the camp. After the silence, panic and madness instantly infected every corner of the camp. Even the strong warriors couldn't help but feel desperate at this moment. They would die here, and they would die faster if they went out. They had lost the right to choose life and death. Boom, 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 boom. A series of familiar, deafening sounds sounded from the gate of the city. After a moment of silence in the noisy and chaotic mountain city, A large number of people rushed to the gate. Surprisingly, no one was wailing anymore. Even the martial artists didn't need to maintain order anymore. Go, go and cheer for the martial kings. The powerful martial kings are still fighting for us. How can we bear to make trouble for the leaders? Go to the gate, but don't make a sound. If anyone dares to disturb the thinking of the martial kings, I will be the first to kill him. The martial kings were equivalent to those in nature's test, so they had sharp ears. When they heard the conversation in the city, they were excited. Inexplicably, a force was injected into their bodies, and they became energetic again. Let's go, brothers. The martial king in red stood up and stared at the 20 giant corpses that had appeared and were attacking the Matrix. He was full of fighting intent. Disturb them. Even if we die, we have to wait for the arrival of the Realm Lord. Fight! Li Hong stepped forward, and his eyes flashed with killing intent. Once you are in danger, don't be obsessed with fighting. The young lord of our camp has already rushed to the Immortal Hall in advance. In 5 days, the Realm Lord will come. Just 5 days. Ding Gang grinned, and his eyes were fearless. Brothers, get your weapons and kill him. The next moment, 21 figures turned into shadows and shot out at the same time. Seeing this scene, hope appeared in the eyes of the residents in the city. Only the slightly fat elder was worried at this moment. Death was inevitable. What, 20 giant corpses? Li Qingling, who had just recovered a little spirit, suddenly stood up when she heard the news from Wu Rong. She immediately walked to Su Li's house and was about to knock on the door. But in the end, reason prevailed over impulse. She took a deep breath and sat down on the steps in front of Su Li's house. Her face was tense. She still remembered that before Su Li practiced in isolation, Su Li only told her the task. Don't wake me up until the last moment. At the last moment, Li Qingling looked up at the 2 light curtains that were still firm. Her eyes flashed with firmness. She took out a pile of materials from the universe ring and began to draw runes on the ground. This was the last rune matrix that the wandering warrior taught her. It was also a rare tactical matrix that was close to being lost. Rune communication matrix. The wandering warrior only gave her 1 set of materials, and the time was limited. But she must succeed. Only in this way could she ensure that she could wake Su Li up at the last moment. Every second counted. Li Qingling took a deep breath. I can do it. Master. Puff. The head of the giant corpse with purple skin suddenly turned back 360 degrees and opened its huge mouth. Ding Gang, who was about to attack in the rear, changed his face instantly. He barely twisted his body and stepped back a few inches. One arm was chewed off by the giant corpse. Ding Gang screamed, but his mind was still clear. He quickly fled into the forbidden matrix. The giant corpse opened its mouth and bit the black light curtain. After the light curtain trembled, it remained motionless. The giant corpse suddenly roared angrily and turned to rush to the nearest King Wu. Seeing the situation was not good, Li Hong could only give up helping the weaker King Wu and turn to deal with the giant corpse. Ding Gang's face was pale. He held the shoulder of the broken arm and jumped onto the city wall in pain. He transmitted the sound. Be careful. This giant corpse is a little special. I see. Li Hong raised his saber to block the fist of the giant corpse. He stepped back a few steps and transmitted the sound to everyone. Other people should also pay attention. The skin of this giant corpse is purple and its head can rotate at will. Don't be bitten. As soon as he said that, 2 or 3 King Wu shouted. One of my ends here is also purple. Me too. Don't be impatient. The purple-skinned giant corpse is just a bit more agile. Pay attention to avoid it and continue to harass it. If you encounter any danger, escape into the light curtain. The red-clothed martial king transmitted the sound to calm everyone, but he sighed in his heart. If this goes on, they won't even last half a day. How can they talk about 6 days? The chubby old man walked to Ding Gang's side and sighed. He formed a seal with both hands, and blue light balls appeared out of thin air and entered Ding Gang's bloody wound. Ding Gang immediately felt the pain ease a lot. He couldn't help but be astonished. He raised his head and couldn't help but say, "Spell? Is this a spell? Aren't you? Does it matter which realm I am from now?" The chubby old man tore open Ding Gang's clothes and bandaged his wound. He said, "Unfortunately, my skills are not good enough. If I could learn even a little bit of the method to use the Milky Way cauldron, you wouldn't be in such a passive position today." Ding Gang's eyes were filled with relief. "You are conscientious for my camp. There is no need to investigate too much. Now I finally understand that your lifespan is really as rumored. You have lived for 3,000 years. The chubby old man smiled and said, "In Qing Shui cultivation world, 3,000 years is nothing. It's because Chimo world has consumed too much vitality because of the death chi. Otherwise, you can all live much longer than me. I don't count on it." Ding Gang scratched his head with one hand and looked at his companions who were still fighting. He suddenly stood up and said, "As long as I can get through this disaster, I don't mind even if I die." As soon as he finished speaking, he rushed out of the light curtain without waiting for the chubby old man to speak. He resolved the crisis for the weakest martial king and joined the battle. The latest chapter of The Poisonous Wife: The Poisonous Wife, read the full text. The Poisonous Wife download. The Poisonous Wife read on the mobile phone. For the convenience of reading next time, you can click collect below to record this time. Chapter 648. Seize every second. Read the record, and you can see it next time you open the bookshelf. If you like The Poisonous Wife, please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, WeChat, etc. Thank you for your support. Chapter 649. You can search for Poisonous Wife on Baidu. Search for the latest chapter. Puff. Blood sprayed. Li Hong held the long saber in his hand and stared at the sharp claws of the giant corpse in front of him. He slowly stepped back and covered the bloody hole in his abdomen. As blood flowed out, his aura gradually weakened. Looking around, there were no other martial kings fighting except for him. The pressure from the 20 giant corpses was so heavy that it was suffocating. "Saber King, come back. You will die if you continue. Your death will be worthless." The red-clothed martial king, who was leaning against the wall, was now covered in blood. There were also 2 long and deep scratches on his back. Blood flowed down his back, forming a pool of dark red on the ground. Li Hong gasped and frowned. He held the long saber tightly for a moment and finally let go. He turned around and jumped onto the wall. If he hadn't reconciled with Qing Ling, he wouldn't be so afraid of death. The chubby old man stopped the bleeding for Li Hong. His face was also very pale. He was only at the spirit-severing realm. It was really too difficult for him to treat the injuries of these passing calamity realm martial artists. "We sacrificed 5 martial kings, but we only managed to delay them for 1 day." Ding Gang glanced at the remaining 15 martial kings. All of them were seriously injured. They had reached their limit. "Chief," he turned to look at the chubby old man. His voice was very soft, but it sounded very heavy in the ears of the people. "Ask the level 7 martial artists for their opinion. We need reinforcements." The chubby old man's expression didn't change. He only sighed. Obviously, he already had this plan. He slowly came to the side of the wall and faced the martial artists who had gathered inside the wall. Looking at the pairs of eyes filled with various emotions, he took a deep breath. His clear voice began to reverberate above the camp. "Martial artists of the Ma camp, as you can see, we have reached a critical moment of life and death. Our camp has 11 martial kings and 10 external martial kings. We have guarded the gate for 7 days. Now, we have lost 5 of our martial kings, and the remaining 16 are all seriously injured and unable to fight anymore. I, the chief of the Ma camp, beg you, fight to the death for our homeland, just to buy time, just to delay until the arrival of the Realm Lord, so that hundreds of thousands of people in the Ma camp can survive." The moment he said that, all the cultivators that filled the streets of the city gates were speechless. The chubby elder frowned. Just as he was about to say something, he saw a level 7 martial artist in the crowd suddenly raise his weapon and shout, "Leader, The peaceful days I've had all these years are all thanks to you. The camp is so dangerous. Why did you only let us go to the battlefield now? Are you looking down on us? That's right. A large group of martial artists began to chime in. Hurry up and open the city gates. We have more people and more strength. We can definitely help. Fight. Kill the giant corpse and avenge the martial kings. Kill, kill, kill. Leader, give the order. All of us are willing to fight. The chubby old man's eyes were already wet as he looked at the excited crowd below the city gate. This was a reason why he was willing to stay in Chimo's circle. In Qingshui's circle, it was impossible to have such a scene. All right, it's my fault. He laughed, and his laughter spread around the city wall. After a quarter of an hour, all the level 7 martial artists will fight. Remember that your task is to interfere with the giant corpse to continue destroying the Black Curtain. Only if you are alive can you continue to interfere. Don't lose your life prematurely. Yes, the shouts were earth-shattering. In the courtyard, Li Qingling wiped her cold sweat. Looking at the rune matrix on the ground that emitted a little brilliance, she showed a relieved smile. She succeeded. After experimenting and confirming that the rune matrix could be used, Li Qingling picked up the child matrix that had just been tested and immediately rushed out of the door. With her speed, she came to the city gate in less than a quarter of an hour and shouted, "Uncle Ma!" Hearing the voice, Chief Ma signaled the guards to let Li Qingling go up the city wall. She immediately saw the horrible scene of 20 giant corpses outside the city. Her hand holding the child array trembled, and her eyes flashed with determination. She took a deep breath, forced herself to calm down, and quickly walked in front of Li Hong. Looking at Li Hong's blood-stained body, her eyes couldn't help but redden. Eldest brother, Li Hong smiled and hugged Li Qingling. Although the injury on his abdomen was affected, he just grinned and continued to smile. Eldest brother is fine. It's dangerous here. You go down first. Seeing this scene, other martial kings couldn't help but think of the people they cared about in their hearts, and their faces were a little soft. They risked their lives in the front for their loved ones. Therefore, even if everyone saw that Li Qingling was a level 7 martial artist and reached the standard of going out of the city to fight, no one said that Li Hong had paid enough. No, I want to stay here. Li Qingling's eyes were full of stubbornness. She held the child matrix tightly in her hand. If the city gate is really lost, it's the same wherever I am in Ma Ying. Li Hong sighed. He knew that his sister's temperament was as stubborn as his since he was a child. No one could change her decision. In this case, you will replace me and be responsible for passing the orders to Uncle Ma. I can concentrate on healing. Li Qingling's eyes suddenly brightened, and she nodded heavily. Only here could she pass the orders to Su Li in the first time. A quarter of an hour later, thousands of level 7 martial artists gathered in Ma Ying rushed out of the city gate. The roar of the giant corpse was earth-shattering. In the blink of an eye, blood flowed like a river outside the city. But even so, the remaining level 7 martial artists still didn't flinch. They roared and rushed up again. It was like hitting a stone with an egg. They knew that it was like hitting a stone with an egg, but they also knew that they had no way back. If they took one step back, they would be desperate and killed. Li Qingling looked at the outside of the city in a daze. Her eyes seemed to be dyed with blood. She didn't expect that she would see such a tragic scene when she just went to the city gate. Was the situation so serious that they needed to exchange lives for survival? She held the rune child matrix so tightly that it turned white. It was not the last moment. Ma sighed and closed his eyes. Only half of the half-month has passed. Why can't we go faster at this time? Go faster. Ma Jintian roared, but he found that his throat was hoarse. His hands were more like 2 bones than hands. He became a bloodless bag of bones. The poisonous insect maniac had sucked up all his flesh and blood. He couldn't get any more power. Ah, cough, cough, cough. Ma Jintian was furious. When he was roaring, his legs were broken directly. He lay on the ground and coughed up dry blood clots. Okay, young man. Bing Feng released a frost cage and wrapped Ma Jintian in it. He smiled to comfort him. You have worked hard enough. You have saved at least 2 days by squeezing yourself like this. Let me handle the rest. After one more day, you can go home." Bing Feng lifted the cage, and the blue light in his eyes soared. Then he went away instantly. 4 hours later, only a little more than 100 martial artists came back from the 1,000 martial artists who rushed out. Most of them were disabled. The smell of blood was extremely strong in the city from the crack of the city gate. More than 900 people died in exchange for 4 hours. Mada's eyes twitched. His heart was bleeding. But as a leader, he must keep calm. Qingling, the warriors of the 6th level, can't go out of the city. Even if they try their best, they can't stop the giant corpses. There will no longer be any martial artists who can do anything for this city. Pass down my orders. Have everyone prepare. Once the city is breached, Mata had to pause for a moment before lowering his voice. Let's try to escape as much as we can. Yes. Li Qingling's eyes were wet. She turned around and immediately gave the order. She still didn't mention the existence of Su Li. She was very clear that if there was no miracle after she gave hope, her strong heart would collapse instantly. Moreover, she didn't have much confidence in Su Li in the face of the terrifying 20 giant corpses. After all, it was just a giant corpse that Su Li sent flying at that time. Under Li Qingling's order, the residents in front of the city gate all bowed to the old man on the city gate and then left. In the blink of an eye, there was no one inside the city wall. Even some guards had left. Only a few lonely people stayed here. Qingling, you should leave too. Leave with your big brother. Mata suddenly said. Li Qingling glanced at Li Hong, who was still healing, but shook her head with a smile. I want to stay here until the last moment. Mata shook his head with a bitter smile and stopped persuading her. There was no sound of fighting. On the lonely city wall, there was only the monotonous bombardment of the giant corpses. Mata just looked at it calmly. For hours later, the black light screen finally shattered and disappeared from the sky above the city. 20 giant corpses roared and ran wildly. They hit the turquoise light curtain and were blocked again. 4 hours. The power of the inhibition is more powerful than I thought. Mata calculated the time in his mind. This nameless forbidden pattern had bought them at least 2 days. How long could the Milky Way cauldron last? In the dull and suffocating atmosphere, time passed bit by bit. Every time the turquoise light curtain shook, it affected people's hearts. Behind them, the turquoise light curtain dropped a dense beam of light over the courtyard, which made the color of the turquoise light by more than 1 level. Only 16 hours later, crack. The harsh breaking sound rang in the ears of everyone above the city wall, but it also seemed to break Mata's heart. Mata's face was pale. Looking at the broken hole on the turquoise light curtain, he smiled bitterly and unwillingly. It can't even hold for 1 day. Is the Milky Way cauldron really a treasure? Li Qingling looked at the crack and bit her lips. Was it the last moment now? I'll lead them away. By time. Ding Gang suddenly stood up and left the turquoise light curtain. His voice was full of determination. My life is not more noble than anything. If I die, Li Hong, discipline my brother for me. As expected, after Ding Gang appeared, all the giant corpses diverted their attention and rushed to him. Come on, you idiots. Let's have some fun. Ding Gang laughed wildly. He narrowly dodged several sharp claws and was about to lead all the giant corpses away. However, at this moment, a strange cry came from the black fog. All the giant corpses paused and then turned to attack the turquoise light curtain. Ding Gang was instantly exasperated. Just as he was about to leave, swoosh. Lightning flashed in the black fog, and a bright light swept past Ding Gang's neck. Ding Gang's expression froze for a moment, and then his head was sent flying into the sky by the blood and fell into the open mouth of one of the giant corpses. The latest chapter of The Poisonous Wife, The Poisonous Wife's full text, The Poisonous Wife's download, The Poisonous Wife's mobile phone. For the convenience of reading next time, you can click favorite below to record this time, chapter 649. You will see it the next time you open the bookshelf. If you like The Poisonous Wife, please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, WeChat, etc. Thank you for your support. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.